Here we go. We're starting, and I pass back the floor to Christina for presenting the, no, to Chris, sorry, for the moderation and to present the rest of the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Celine. I think actually you took some of my best lines. It's amazing to see so many people joining us today. The fact that we had over 700 registrations for this event was amazing. Obviously, we're not expecting all of those to join, but I can see we're almost at nearly 200. As Celine said, obviously, unfortunately, we can't open microphones, and we do ask that you keep your videos off just to help the network. But there are definitely tools there for you to interact, whether it's through chat or through Slido. I will ask my colleague to put up the Slido QR code, please. And we will make sure the hashtag for the Slido is also in the WebEx chat, so you can see it. It's amazing, really, to have followed the work of the TEG, or the Technical Expo Group, since 2018. I mean, this idea was really originally conceived by CINEA, and in particular, the support that's been given by Anya Detente from CINEA and from DG MARE. And to have seen how this group has progressed over the last 6 years. And here we are today now presenting 6 deliverables, which are hugely detailed. And it's amazing to now have the opportunity for the authors to present them to you. A reminder that all of this work has been voluntary by the experts, which I think is really incredible. And that's you know, one of the reasons for today is really to give the opportunity for the authors and all of those that have contributed to share what they've done, and obviously to gather comments, ideas, suggestions, questions from you, both in the room and in the audience and online, in order for us to develop these and maybe improve for the next iteration. With no further ado, I pass to Andrei Abramovic, one of our co-chairs. The other is Ioni Caitaranto, who we will hear from a bit later. But Andrei, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris, for this nice introduction. And also, I would like to thank you a lot for this opportunity for this workshop, where Technical Expert Group has a chance to present results in what we've been doing in the last 4 years, and practically to show how is the application of this result, that we didn't just provide the reports, we also wanted to show how this is applicable. Also today, I would like to say one thing, that this is not results and the work of the experts. On these results, actually, this group was supported strongly by assistant mechanism with Chris McDowell from us. Also, it was very important support of the DG MARE, which was practically here from the beginning, and they practically, with Juan Ronco, who was the person who established this group and wrote the terms of reference in 2020. In this moment, he is retired, and with us is Celine Frank, and also the others establishing institution was CINEA, which was presented by Anya Detente, who is with us from the early beginning, and who is always practically steering this group, that we have tangible result, that we doesn't lost in the discussion, that we doesn't lost in the presentation, that we have a practically tangible result that we can present as in this workshop. So I would like to start the first session. It's a session about MSP data framework. We are going to first explain briefly what is it, this deliverable, which we published this summer. Then we are going to present 3 presentations, how this MSP data framework is applied. It's applied with the REMAP project, it's applied with the MSP OR project, and also we had development of the teasers, which is going to be presented within the demonstrative video. Then after, we are going to have a question and answers session to finalize this first session. So, Maritime Special Planning Data Framework, as I said, it was published in this summer, this deliverable. But what was the motivation for development of this framework? The motivation was to structure and organize input spatial information for the maritime special planning process. But as in Europe, we have the situation that most of the countries are already finalized this process, the first part, they adapted their plans. We also see that this MSP data framework could be used to facilitate monitoring and evaluation of the operational plans. Practically, this work started in 2017 within the project Plasmar, where we actually established the framework for the structuring data within the cross-border project. And we actually established 5 clusters: marine environment, marine protected areas, physical oceanography, coastal land use, and the maritime activities. We successfully tested in the project. We collected the data within the Madeira, Azores, and the Canary Islands, and we had opportunity to apply the same application on these areas and have the same similar result that could be that we could assess because we had the same structure of the data collection. This framework was updated within the MSP global project and practically published in these 2 publications idea of the structured data collection for the maritime special planning. Within the 5 cluster what we had, we added 2 new ones. It was the socioeconomic information and the governance information clusters. And with the technical expert group, we started to work in 2021. Within the second cycle, we call this process iterative testing because we was analyzing the data collection of the different member states, of the different cross-border projects to obtain practically MSP data framework, which has a 7 cluster and 7 related checklists. So the first cluster, it's marine and the coastal environment. It practically structured the marine environment applying using the Marine Strategy Framework Directive Good Environmental Status, which includes 11 quality descriptors. For the coastal waters and coastal inputs, we use the Good Ecological Status of Water Framework Directive. So this is the checklist, what we actually are providing. But we are not saying that all these data teams need to be covered and collected. We are saying they should be considered and, if relevant, collected within the MSP data. The second cluster is conservation, where we actually include information about marine protected area, but also the coastal protected area, and any designated site that actually deals with the security or the risk. The third is oceanographical characteristics and the climate. The oceanographic characteristics are necessary because they can boost different maritime activities, but also they can limit it. And the climate, it's absolutely necessary to check within this cluster because we can, within this characteristic, we can see the time series and understand and analyze the trends of the climate that can actually affect the maritime special planning and the maritime activities. Anthropogenic activities are included within the 4th and the 5th cluster. This is the coastal, land use, and maritime operative activities that are classified within the code list, which is coming from the INSPIRE code list of hierarchical INSPIRE land use classification system, which we included the link. And there we can actually go to the checklist to all the coastal and the maritime sector. And the 6th topic is the socio-economical information, which is in this moment quite vague, especially if we see the socio-demographic, we include like population characteristic, which could be lots of things. We expect some update within the next years. And also from the economic information, we really say that everybody should consider the jobs and the income of the coastal and maritime sectors. And finally, we have a governance cluster, which includes information about administrative competence of the area of the planning, of the administrative competence of the maritime activities, coastal activities, And of course, also it's necessary to consider international and national regulations, talking about the conventions, legislation, and policies. So within this product of MSP data framework, which is included in the report, we have a flow diagram for developing the data collection, going through the checklist, and updating the data collection, identifying the data gaps, and trying to update with the monitoring survey or within the proxy. And we also included in this deliverable monitoring evaluation data collection and an update diagram flow. So just to finalize this product, Maritime Special Planning Data Framework, it's a product that can help you within the data collection, the structure, input, special information. Also, we see that using this product, we can facilitate identification of the data gaps or the information that is relevant but not included in the MSP process. We are seeing also inside in this deliverable, it's included a kind of the proposed structure to improve interoperability. There are a number of the data models, basically inspired data models, that are proposed to be used, and also including the semantic code list. Also, using this, we can improve the comparability of applied data collections, and especially we can improve the comparability of the results. And within this product, we can support design for monitoring and evaluation. So this is basically this report that you can find it on the European MSP platform, where we can practically present, where you can download it and actually use it for your use. So I would like to now to continue within the second presentation. So just continue, this is, we first now presented the MSP data framework, and now we are going to show within the three how can be used and how it's actually applied to this MSP data framework. So the first this of the application is Maritime Special Planning Input Data Model, which is based on data framework. And this work is actually delivered within the project Remap. Project Remap is a project that was that last 2 years. We started in 2022. The consortium was established within the technical expert group, and the proposal of the project that was accepted, it used the data products of the technical expert group, and this is one of these is MSP data framework that was just presented. Another one is MSP data model. This is the model. The European MSP data layer that is actually shared and developed by the MSP. So what Remap actually do? Remap is developing innovative technical framework for support of the European MSP process, basically monitoring and evaluation. It develops a modular simplified analytics, which we call the models. And these models practically provide assessment of one part of Maritime Special Plan. We are trying to keep it simple with these models, with this analysis, as we want to have increased reusability. But idea is that we putting together 10 simplified analytics, we will have a quite complex assessment or evaluation of national special plan. So the first of these analytics is input data analytics, and we are calling it input data model. It's exploratory analysis. It's not a special analysis as other analysis from the Remap. It practically provides information on which data should be considered, what data is missing, and should be applied in the monitoring and evaluation, and in the next iteration of the Maritime Special Planning. It is auto-assessment. It actually includes the questionnaire, which will be based on the 4 assessment topics. And the first one is thematic relevance for the MSP process, assessment of the fair principles or transparency of the data, special and temporal characteristics, data quality and accuracy based on special data quality framework. So practically, we have a number of questions that we based on these 4 topics that we are actually assessing all the topics, data topics that we have included in MSP data framework, in the checklist. So we are practically starting with the first one. What is the relevance of this data topic for the MSP process? If it's not, we are going to the next one. If yes, we also have to understand if this data of this topic was considered within the MSP process and if this data been used within the MSP process. The next one is the FAIR principles. So we want to know if data is findable, if it's accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And then, which is very relevant, important for maritime special planning, we want to understand what is the special and temporal characteristics. So we want to understand what is the coverage of the data. Is it just cover only part of the exclusive economic zone or just the coastal waters, or it's sporadic, it's not adequate for maritime special planning? What is the special resolution? What is the temporal coverage when the data set was obtained? Long time before MSP process or just before MSP process? This is very relevant for the monitoring evaluation. Then we have a temporal resolution as well. And finally, we have a data quality and accuracy, which is based on special data quality framework. So we assess completeness, timeless, data accuracy, and data consistency. So, as I said, this is not a special data product. It's a report on data collection that is used in the MSP process and how this collection can be used for the monitoring evaluation phase. It includes information for entire data collection, but also for each cluster of MSP data framework and each topic. What is the relevance and application score? What is the transparency score? What is the SDQF score? And what is the score regarding the special and temporal coverage? It's including set of indexes, charts, but what is more important includes the list of data which have been used, which has high transparency and comply with the SDQF, but also it includes the list of the data set that needs to be updated, and I think this is a very important part. So here we have the list of the data set that hasn't been used in the maritime special planning process, but they are relevant, which are not transparent and should be included the transparency. But also that data set that should be increase the accuracy, consistency, special temporal coverage. And I can see that this looks quite abstract as we presented this in the January to the stakeholders, and we said, okay, this is the concept that we delivered, but we needed to test it, to we have it clear, developers. And we find it a practically quite interesting use case. So we use it suitability analysis for the offshore wind energy that we didn't have maritime special plan. We use the analysis that we delivered 2 years ago. And this is the suitability analysis for offshore wind energy that was applied for the Canary Islands and for the Madeira. We used the 5-cluster framework that we showed on the beginning. And here we can actually see the results. On the Madeira, we have a high suitability indexes, and when we see the Canary Islands, the profile, it's much more restrictive. The results are much more lower. And as we were working on this, and we were collecting the data and applying the same data analysis, we understood that this is because of the data gaps that are actually having within the Madeira, and the data on the environment actually were providing these restrictions within the Canary Islands. But here presenting just saying, okay, we have much more number of the data set for the Canary Islands than Madeira, we didn't see this is a good indicator because we can always take one data set and split it in 2 and then in 4 and 8, whatever. So this is not a good indicator. So we tested with the input data model. And then we see something quite interesting. We see, okay, when we assess the first cluster, marine and coastal environment, we have 40% of the relevance and application score. Transparency score is also much more higher. SDQF score is higher, and spatial and temporal coverage score it's higher. Within the second, third, and the fourth cluster, which is the marine and coastal conservation, oceanographic data and climate, coastal land use and planning, we were using European data products, so we were just using one data set, same for the both, for the Canary Islands and for the Madeira, so we had practically the same result there. But again, when we were assessing the fifth one, on the maritime operative sector, where you need to obtain data on the local and the national databases, again, you have these discrepancies within the application, discrepancies with the transparency, etc. We also assessed the socio-economical and governance part, but as this analysis was delivered on the 5-cluster framework, there was practically zero. So we understood that we bump on something quite interesting here, no? Because we believe that within this type of the analysis, we can actually identify what is going to be impact on the result coming from the data gaps. And this is something that could be practically applied not just on suitability analysis and the zoning, it could be applied on the cumulative impact assessment, and finally on the maritime spatial planning, because this is a multi-parameter analysis which finally has a political decision. So this is something that we delivered last week, this analysis. We are quite excited. We don't know exactly what we are going to get, but within the next few months, I hope I will have a chance to tell a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. Just while my colleague brings Victor in for the next presentation, don't go anywhere. Just a reminder, if anyone wants to do Q&A, it is on Slido. But Andrei, while we wait, there was a question here. What's next for the MSP data framework? Will there be a next stage? What's the next iteration? Where's it going?
Okay. I think it was not clear what I show it, because there was 2 clusters that we didn't have too much experience, and I'm talking about the social economical cluster and the governance. And we expect that we can structure better these parts than it's actually now, because actually social part it's quite vague. We can also improve the part of the economical part and even for the governance. So this is something that we expect in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina, how are we getting on? Time for one more question? Okay. And I confess I don't actually understand this last one, but are you using SST data, and how are you using it in MSP? The last question. That makes more sense.
Yeah, it's in the sea temperature data. It's included in the cluster of oceanographic parameters. And as I said, this is very relevant within the framework because of the sea temperature can actually boost aquaculture or actually reduce the aquaculture or limit aquaculture. And also it's very relevant because if you have the time series, you can actually understand what are the trends of the ECCLD data and how this is going to affect within the future. This is a video of Sebastian Besquier developed the video. It's how is being used used MSP data framework for development of the tasers. So the video is quite nice and explaining quite well what is the thesaurus, if you are not aware exactly about this. So let's give it the floor to Sebastian, who was not been able to be with us, but he sent this demonstrative video to show it.
For public policies, and that's where the MSP unit gets in. We are currently 5 members. We were created in 2016, and I'm here from Hello everyone, thank you for being here, thank you for watching this video. I'm Bastien, and I'm developer for the MSP unit at Rome. So as you can see, you're watching a video, because I wasn't able to make it to the TEG workshop, so I hope this will be as interesting as if I was currently there. So today we're talking about the thesaurus based on the MSPDF created by the TEG. MSPDF for Maritime Spatial Planning Data Framework. So the summary, in first we will talk about the context, about the SHAM, who we are, and the REMAP project, because it's from the REMAP project that gets the idea of creating a thesaurus based on the MSPDF. Secondly, we will talk about the foundations and goals of this thesaurus. In third, we will talk about how the thesaurus reality collides with MSDI's reality. When we talk about MSDI, it's Marine Spatial Data Infrastructure. And finally, we will talk about the state of the art. What does the thesaurus look like? And what's next for it? First, the context. Here at Rome, we got 3 different goals. In first, we do the national hydrography. Secondly, we do the defense support because the French Marine, we are under the French Marine. And finally, we do the support for public policies. And that's where the MSP unit gets in. We are currently 5 members. We were created in 2016, and I'm here from 2023. And we got different goals. Firstly, we drive SHAM's participation in MSP European projects. Secondly, we support authority responsible of MSPD implementation. Third, we are the lighthouse keeper for tools and data in MSDI context. And finally, we are the reference data provider for 3 types of data. Physical marine environment, limits of sovereignty, and finally, safety of navigation. Now, let's talk about the REMAP context. REMAP is the European project where we develop 8 different modules, application, that permits to do decision-making, to support decision-making about MSP, of course. Each of those modules have different thematic, and all of them need input data, and that's where MSPEX gets in. It provides the data for the 8 modules. How does MSPEX work? So it harvests metadata from different MSDI, MLNet, HELCOM, SHAM, and others. And we do an automatic labeling on it. It means that we will analyze the metadata and put a label on it. And where does the label came from? It came from a thesaurus. We need to choose the thesaurus. So, how to choose the thesaurus? We are basing on different problematic. On the REMAP project, the problematic is how to provide the right data for each module. In an MSPEX context, it can be translated as how to correctly categorize data. All the different data into 7 different clusters. Let's call that thematics, like marine and coastal environment or governance information and others. And the MSPDF gives is basing those thematics. It is based on 6 existing thesaurus like Emonnet, Copernicus, Hilux, which is based on Inspire, and others. The goals of the thesaurus is first to be exhaustive, specific, and relevant, because it should answer the needs of 8 different modules. It should be readable by applications, because it should be readable by MSPEX. And it should be multilingual, because this is a European project, and some geoportals aren't right in English. And tada, we got the MSPDF thesaurus. And we hope that this MSPDF thesaurus should be eclectic and permit to be a better labeling. That's why it's important to have this thesaurus, because if it answers the need of those 8 modules, it can answer the need of a lot of different MSP modules. But it collides with MSDI's reality. I will talk about the first problematic. So in the MSPDF thesaurus, and like every other thesaurus, you got the bathymetry category, which can be translated as bathymetry. For now, everything is fine. But in the MSDI reality, it's not the same thing. Because bathymetry can be described like bathymetry, of course, but also altimetry and gravimetry. That's why we need to add synonyms in the thesaurus. And it is already implemented, but in English for now. Next, the second problematic. Let's get an extract of the MSPDF thesaurus. You got fishing gears. This is only an example. This is only an example that permits to explain much better the second problematic. So we got fishing gears, separated into 2 categories. Of course, there is more, but for now, let's say there is only dynamic gears and static gears. And inside of it, there is different fishing gears. And in another geoportal, in another MSDI, we got the data called seabed gear. Where should we put it in the thesaurus? How should it be labeled? Okay, we don't know how to do it, so let's create another category for it. And where should we put dredge fishing? Should we put into dynamic gears? Should we put it into seabed gears? We don't know. But let's duplicate it for now. It answered the problematic. Cool. But here you go with another data called pelagic gear. And where should we put a pelagic gear? So let's create another category where we put pole line 2. It is duplicated. And I think you get the problematic. It can become wide and for nothing. how to prevent the thesaurus to be enormous by adding references. How the references work. So here you go with fishing gears. We describe it with another category called gear by gear, and inside it there is the whole, all the different fishing gears. And we create other categories like seabed gear, pelagic gear, dynamic gear, and we add references like this. The dredge fishing will be linked to pelagic gear and dynamic gear, and pole line will be linked to pelagic gear. Like that, it permits to be a less enormous, shorter, and richer. And it's important to know that this is a general problematic. We are using fishing gears, but we can also apply it to fish and others. That's why references are important. So a little state of the art. What is the current version of the thesaurus, MSPDF thesaurus? For now, this is only a prototype. It is created by the CHOM, Yannick Leroy, Émilie Delaroche, and Bastien Fouque, myself. It is only in English for now, so we need to do the multilingual part. And there is two different documents for it. The first, the text file, which permits to be readable by humans, and the XML file, which permits to be readable by machines. So as I said before, we implement already the synonyms. It is readable by application because of the XML file, and I hope soon we can find it on the GitLab. I will give to you the link to the GitLab as soon as possible. What's coming next after that? The goal is to validate the prototype for now. After that, then we will add references, so the second problematic, which permits to have the thesaurus richer and shorter. Thirdly, we will rework some categories based on the references feature. We will make it multilingual, and finally, we will take into account feedbacks on people who are using the thesaurus. And with all of that, we could have a first good version of the thesaurus. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope you're having a good TEG workshop. Bye.
Thank you very much to Bastien from CHOM. We should hopefully now join Victor. Obviously, it's never ideal when you lose one of your speakers, but I think he is joining us now. Just a reminder that the Slido is open. I can see Q&As going in there, but if you have any questions for any of the speakers, then Andre and hopefully Victor will be able to answer them as soon as we finish this. Victor, I hope you're with us.
Just to say that then I'm going to delete now the Slido command. So we tried to improve the volume, but if someone still has some difficulties, please let us know, and presenters are going to try to be closer to the mic.
Yes, the presentations will be shared, and the recording of the event will be made available on the MSP platform afterwards.
I couldn't switch on my mic, but happily you have enabled it. Thank you very much. It's I'm happy to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation, and congratulations for the hybrid organization. Although we have, despite all these tiny details of technicalities problems. So shall I share my presentation, right? Or you have it there? Yeah. Okay. So I hope you're able to see my presentation now.
Yes.
You can? Yeah. Great. I suppose you are, because I have troubles also hearing you guys over there. Well, I'm here to briefly talk to you about our use case of the MSP data framework that very nicely Andre has introduced you within the MSPR project. In fact, it was a great tool, sort of speaking, a great framework to promote and structure dialogue within a series of challenges. So before that, just to structure and introduce you a bit of context, let me briefly tell you about the MSPR project, which is the continuation of the MARE-SP. It's a series of European-funded projects regionally, in our case, in the European outermost regions. Not just in the Macaronesia Sea basin this time, but also adding the French Guiana as well. These regions are remote, made normally from islands, small size, far from mainland markets, but very rich in terms of biodiversity, oceanographic conditions, making them great natural laboratories to explore how MSP processes can be adapted to such places. So within the MSPR goals is the support of the MSP competent authorities of Portugal, Spain, and France in the outermost regions to implement a series of pending tasks within their MSP processes, such as filling knowledge gaps, advanced ecosystem-based approach, monitoring and evaluation, and also promoting cross-border cooperation across borders to ensure coherent planning processes. And for that the University of Azores has developed the so-called Ocean Governance Platform within MSPR project. You can access the platform through the MSPR webpage, through this QR code or that link. But basically, it's an online platform that gathers a series of rooms to be a trustful arena for partners to discuss, share knowledge, lessons learned, good practices, not just within the project, but also with other sister projects and community of practices internationally, especially at European. So the governance platforms is mainly divided by these 4 working groups: data knowledge, filling gaps, ecosystem-based management, and monitoring and evaluation, from which the data knowledge, the University of Las Palmas de Gran Canaria, we are the focal point. And this is within where I'm going to briefly present you this use case. So a series of challenges, or more than that, like some discussion or brainstorming thematic challenges, were proposed to use the governance platform regarding these topics: stakeholder engagement, social impact assessment, ecosystem services, and emerging sectors. And to start discussing and exchanging around these topics, we found very useful and handy the MSP data framework. Not just from what Andre has explained, some of the benefits of using this framework is to have a clear sort of structure of the input data, the different type of data that we can use or should use within the all MSP process and evaluations needed for it, but also to promote the identification of data gaps and needs, improves comparability of results and interoperability of data collections. But what we found, it was actually that the data framework could be directly used as a sort of common ground to talk the same language within all different, within 3 countries, 4 different MSP planning processes with different approaches, even though to the same type of analysis, such as social impact assessments, cumulative impacts, ecosystem services, and so on. But sometimes, even though we think we're talking about the same thing, we might be thinking from our approach, from our data, from how we are used to do the things. So having this common ground this checklist of data types was really useful to sort of ensure that we were all in the same ground, talking about the same thing in the same way. So just as an example, I'm going to present you how the process that we follow in this stakeholder engagement, which was the first topic of our first challenge. And basically we did a survey based on the general types of the data framework. And the survey then was used to foster a discussion. And I'm going to present you very briefly the results of the survey and how that followed the discussion that we had. For instance, you're seeing here the graph, the 7 main general types of data in this histogram in 2 colors. So first we asked MSP competent authorities and partners within the MSPR, the 7 respondents that we had, how appropriate each general type of data they would consider, both theoretically and in practice, based on what their MSP processes were used, how appropriate was for them to collect all these different type of data based on or using stakeholder engagement processes. And here you see that the theory is always higher than what in practice was able to be done, and also how some type of data seems to be more more adequate to be collected from stakeholders than others, right? For example, you see the socioeconomic information and maritime activities and coastal land uses being very feasible to be collected through stakeholders. But then some others, like oceanographic characteristics, perhaps was understood that these are more this type of data is more subjected to the objective and our understanding of the functioning of ecosystems rather than social perception. Another question that we asked them was, again, following this the data framework general type of data, how usable the data that they collected from stakeholders, how usable and reliable they thought that was to be used for various purposes within a formal MSP process. And here you see the lighter blue and yellow means it's more usable and more reliable. And you can see the differences between the different type of data. So these again is not statistically significant, the results itself, but it was used to foster dialogue within stakeholders, within the partners of the project. And it was interesting to see how based from these common ground discussions around different methods of stakeholder engagement would influence this reliability, and also how usable the different type of data are for the various purposes. Interestingly enough, for example, governance information seems to be reliable and usable, but it's not that clearly. It's not that clear that it might be, right? So again, it was a very useful framework to foster discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victor, and congratulations. Everyone could hear you. A lesson to me and any of the speakers following. We must speak louder. I already put Andre on the spot earlier with a couple of Q&As, so I'm just cherry picking them for you, Victor. I hope you are still with us. There was a question here just regarding how can MSP planners benefit from utilizing a thesaurus within the MSP data framework, or is this tool exclusively for data professionals? What do you think, Victor? I mean, do you need to be a data expert to use a thesaurus, or is it something that's a bit more accessible?
Question, sorry, it's probably you're not. Oh yeah, now you are. This is a funny thing with the mic, comes and goes. Well, sorry, I'm not able to answer this question regarding the thesaurus. I hope Andre is able to.
Okay, this is the thesaurus is a very interesting thing, and Bastien showed what they developed. This is a development within the project remap, and the thing is that they are going to develop application, and this application we are going to share with everyone. So probably it's not going to be simple to install it, to develop it, but idea is that this thesaurus application will be able to be used widely. This is the idea. So, yeah, you should actually know about metadata to start to use it, but it would be open for the wide public. Yeah.
Thank you, Andre. I think just to keep us on time, I'm going to ask Andrew to come and join us on the floor. Thank you very much, Victor, for joining us. That was really good. And thank you to everyone that contributed, including Bastien.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me as well, and thank you for the previous speakers. I'm going to build on what they've said already. So they were developing the Maritime Spatial Plan data framework, while on the other side of things, we were developing this metadata standard for maritime spatial plans. So the idea of this is to have a common structure to describe data associated with maritime spatial plans. So briefly, this is what I'm going to go through today, and for the benefit of people on the call, we'll briefly touch on what metadata is, then we'll move on to why we are doing this. Is that okay? This design approach we took for developing this metadata profile, as well as use cases that helped to inform how we developed this. At the profile itself then, before we move on to examples. So, first of all, what is metadata? I've got a couple of images here, and essentially metadata is data about data. It tells you something about something else. We'll use the example of this beer bottle. On any bottle, doesn't have to be beer, you'll find a label. On that label, usually you'll have the name of the beer, as well as information about the contents of the bottle, including the alcohol, the volume of the bottle, instructions on the best before date, how to get rid of it, the barcode, if it's recyclable, what not to do when you're drinking this, like for driving or something like that. So it gives you a lot of information about something. On the other side, we have this image of a cat, and at first point, the metadata for that image is a cat. But the other side of it is, if you look behind the digital information that's provided with that image, you have a lot of metadata other than just it being a cat, including information on where it was taken, who took it, when they took it, what format it's in. And you see you can get a lot more machine understandable information by just looking beyond the surface of something. So to summarize on that, metadata tells you something about something else. So in an ideal world, a piece of metadata will give you all of this information, give you a title, give you a description or an understanding of what's going on, as well as the temporal or spatial coverage and who owns or who created that piece of data. The next bit I want to talk about is why we are doing this. I think we've already touched on this a bit earlier, and we are all probably pretty aware that there's an MSP directive from the EU that is enforcing every nation to create their own maritime spatial plan and publish that information along with the data sets that underpin it. And these are all to achieve specific ecological, economic, social, or indeed political objectives. But to really achieve those, you really have to have effective management of marine resources, and that really means that we avoid conflict, whether at the sectoral level, for instance, fishing versus shipping versus offshore renewable energy versus tourism, but as well, a lot of our countries are neighbours with each other, so you can't really have much going on without conversation and discourse between the different neighbouring bodies, so that there isn't any conflicts over what policies they pursue. And to improve or to make this possible, the data and indeed the information needs to be accessible and interoperable so that people can make the most informed and best informed decisions. All that being said, before I go into the design approach of it, I wanted to show this cartoon because I think it's quite relevant in development of any kind of standards. The situation normally is there's a lot of different competing standards. In this one, 14, we all think that's mad. We have to waste resources on developing data and putting it out in 14 different ways. And everyone agrees we need to get a better new overall gazumping standard that will overcome everything else. But then soon thereafter, you find out that now you have 15 standards to maintain. So knowing this, we took it into the development and the design approach we took with this. We're not purporting that this is perfect or anything of the sort, but we're hoping that we're not reinventing the wheel in this metadata profile. So taking that on board, we took on board the FAIR data principles, as Andre mentioned earlier on: findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, and now the data should be that. We looked at other EU directives that have come in the past, have had data components and what they did, and as well as that, international best standards. There's ISO standards, there's DCAT, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, and that's what we've tried to build upon rather than reinvent anything in particular. So with that, we started the process of requirements gathering as well as use case gathering. And I'm not going to read through them because I can't even really see them. But the general gist of these, and the slides will be available for anyone who wants them. The general gist of these is people want to know what plans are being made, where they're being made for, what is the data that underlies those plans, who are the organizations responsible, and basically that was the kind of information that people wanted. How do you discover the data? How do you discover the plans? And as you see when we go through the profile, we've tried to address a lot of these use cases. So all of this led to being this metadata standard for maritime spatial plans, which was published last year. And again, a link can be shared to show this, which goes through the whole process in detail. I'm hopefully not going to be that detailed, but this is what the profile itself looks like. As you can see, there's a lot of different classes there, and it looks a bit complicated and maybe something catered for data professionals, but hopefully when I break it down, it'll be a bit more clear to the people here and online. We have indeed, if I have the mouse there, the MSP data framework. Criteria, the 7 categories are there, but as I'll go through now, it tries to tell a story that shows you the marine spatial plan for a particular country and the data set that exists therein. So breaking that down into those classes you see, into their mandatory bits, we have first and foremost the marine plan itself, which is the plan for a particular country or region, and the mandatory fields associated with those are the name, the country, the date, the geographic coverage, as well as the role, which is a linking to another feature you'll see in a moment, which basically sums up what the responsibility of the organization is with that marine spatial plan. The next category, or the next class, was the data set itself, which is the meat of the particular metadata or piece of metadata that tells you what you're actually looking at. And the mandatory field associated with that is the organization linked to that particular piece of data. The date speaks for itself, but generally you put in when the piece of data is from, or indeed when the plan is enforced from and when it expires. The policy is a linking tool for helping discovery, and you can put anything in there you want. There's no mandatory fields in there, but if you had something that linked to a local policy or local piece of legislation, or indeed an international piece of legislation, you can put it in there and it can be linked out through that. Moving on, we have these other classes, including the digital resource, which is the link to the piece of data itself, including a name and the actual data type that it is. Geographic coverage, so where the particular piece of data or plan is relevant for, as well as the organization, either of the metadata creator or indeed of the plan creator, and the role as we spoke about earlier. The key thing to note with these is that they're adaptable and malleable, so that means that we can put in as much or as little detail in there as you want. So we're not trying to force people to enter in lots and lots of information that they may not necessarily have, and therefore discourage them from actively doing this metadata profile. So hopefully the next bit will make it a bit more simpler to understand. So we're going to look at examples of this metadata standard, and particularly with Ireland, where I'm from, just for ease of creation. Just to hark back to some of those use cases from earlier, people want to know the organizational roles. So who was responsible for what and what did they do with regards to their maritime spatial plan for a particular country or area. The contact points, again, similarly to the organizational roles, who can they contact about what or who did what for where. And then finally, the validity of a spatial plan, I think, is very important because you want to know when the plan is valid for or when it indeed lapses. So you can plan for your own future activities. So the first one I want to show was simply for this top left box here, which is kind of common metadata that goes throughout the whole profile for a particular country, that is, or a particular plan. This information shouldn't change much between different data sets submitted. So we have the name, in this case, the National Marine Planning Framework, which is the official maritime spatial plan for Ireland. And indeed, the dates and the country information and indeed the organization information shouldn't change. As you can see here, the role, if I can read, is plan creator, and that shouldn't change throughout any data set submitted using this profile. So that was just, I wanted to show that one first, but now to get into the actual examples themselves. This, on the left, you can see a map of the data that this metadata profile is describing. This is offshore renewable energy license sites at a particular point in time in the Irish Sea and in the Celtic Sea. You can see the first part of this is the similar metadata. In this case, instead of using a web map service for the geographic coverage, it's a bounding box, so it just shows you the adaptability of the profile itself. And then all of that other information is roughly the same, but as you go through it, you can kind of see the legislation. So Marine Area Planning Act was the actual piece of legislation that's related to the National Marine Planning Framework. And there is a policy underneath that this data set relates to, which is Offshore Renewable Energy Policy 3. You can get the name of the data set that's submitted, as well as the organizational information of that data provider, as well as direct link to the data that's there. So it's kind of in a simple, straightforward way without adding too much complexity to it. So it should be standard enough metadata that's already been collected for a particular data set. Another example is of spawning grounds, which is a scientific data set. As you can see, the first part again is exactly the same. National Marine Planning Framework, the dates are the same, the country is the same. In this case, the geographic coverage is the same. But what is different is, in this case, there's no EMODNet human activity code, which is one of those kind of nice things you can add in if you wanted to add in. There's a lot of other ones you could add in as well. But in this case, it doesn't have one, but it does still have a particular policy under the Act. And it does have different digital resource information. So again, the flexibility of that is you don't need to comply to a single format. It'll take whatever format you give, in this case a shapefile, and the organization information is different again. And then the final one I'm going to show you is just benthic broad habitat. It's kind of catch-all really for all of these. So again, the first part is the same. In this case, we do have a human activity code. The benthic broad habitat type is the input data set. The policy is seafloor integrity policy. The information on the organization, and indeed the MSP data framework cluster is included in this as well, which I should have said earlier, as well as the descriptor for it. But you can see again, there's a different type of data set provided in this format, web map service. So again, it's flexible in that way. Now, before I wrap up, because I'm conscious of time, I want to talk very briefly about future applications for this profile. It's very easy to generate, and this can be generated off most of the previous standards that were mentioned in the last presentation, whether it be Inspire or indeed CDataNet or EMODNet. And that it could then be ingested back into those platforms and then reused in things like the source that was mentioned earlier. So it's something for discussion later on, I think, but I think it's important to note that this is adaptable for the future. So to summarize, the profile is based on best practice as much as we can. We're trying to promote cross-border cooperation with it and not scare people away with it. The idea is to be interoperable and adaptable as much as possible. And I think there is potential for future applications. So thank you for your time on that. That's our information if anyone wants to get in touch afterwards, but we can take questions as well.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you for a very clear presentation. There's a couple of questions online, but before I go online, is there anyone in the room just to bring us all together? Anyone wants to bring a question from the room? No? Okay, no problem. Online, Andrew, how can data providers implement this specific metadata profile?
Well, as a first instance, I'd recommend looking, if you're a data professional, looking at the paper itself, which goes through the specification. We also have started to develop scripts that, depending on what you're already maintaining your data in, we can work to generate this as another output very simply. So, okay. Thank you very much, Juan. Your comments popped up there. That's very kind of you. And then the other question specifically on the metadata is this metadata standard somehow aligned to the INSPIRE directive? And if yes, what benefit does that bring? The intention was to be, while not compliant with INSPIRE, because there is, and I won't go into how the goalposts move on INSPIRE, because I'd say people in this room might know about that as well. But the intention was to align with it as much as possible. It doesn't have all of the features of INSPIRE, but it has most of the essential criteria for it. It's useful in that if people are already generating their data to apply or to comply with INSPIRE, this can just be another byproduct of it and be reused with the MSP DFs, as well as other projects that are ongoing.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Just looking at Slido, if there's any other questions relating to metadata. There's a couple of questions there still referring back to the thesaurus. Okay, again, thank you, Juan. In which case, thank you very much, Andrew. Any questions you've submitted, we will do our best to answer separately, offline. This one we've already answered. In which case, I will pass the floor to Marta, who is hiding behind me. Thank you, Andrew.
So, good afternoon, good morning for those of you in a different time zone. We are thrilled to share with you the findings of the socioeconomic subgroup, which is led by Jose Luis Santiago from CEDMAR. Jose intended to be here today, but his daughter was born this very Sunday. So unfortunately, he cannot be here. While I am doing the presentation, I wish to remark that he is the brain and steer at the wheel. And with that said, the next 30 minutes, we will frame the relevance of the socioeconomic dimension. We then will present the findings of the TEG socioeconomic subgroup and finalize by introducing the next steps on this highly promising field. To start with, let's say that socioeconomic dimensions has become trendy in many areas. Particularly in MSP, the more we advance on planning, the more useful socioeconomic data seem to be. They are useful to develop, monitor, and assess the plans, but they also provide tangible evidence on the benefits of those plans, and they help in supporting strategic initiatives, for instance, the blue economy, and more important, they enhance the credibility and legitimacy of the plans. In the European Union context, advances in the socioeconomic dimension are a result of a policy-driven process facilitated by the European Commission with the concerted action from the member states. How so? For instance, by including in the MSP regulation that economic and social aspects are core objectives and core requirements of the plans, but also ensuring that its policy and its strategies are using the best available data and the best available evidence. Let's see a couple of examples. With the blue economy, where the data are not available, the Commission has created the tools for systematic data gathering and for knowledge advances. And from the very beginning and the initial formulations, we ended with having a formalized blue economy observatory for the European Union. I'm sorry, I hear some echo. I don't know if they are hearing me well or not. Like singing. Okay, I will do my best. Okay, then similarly with the MSP, what we have seen are initial efforts to set the baseline, what data are available, that were followed by groundbreaking methodological advances that are available both in technical reports and in scientific papers. This support has been continuous, and from the beginning, we have seen that both social and economic data were mostly absent due to both data gaps and methodological gaps. Before we continue, I will kindly ask you here and at home to close your eyes for a second. And when closing your eyes, just try to picture what you see when I say socioeconomic data. No cheating. Once you have done so, and with that list in your mind, have a look to this non-exhaustive list. And you will recognize some usual suspects like gross value added or employment, but perhaps be surprised with other like wealth distribution or the staff allocated to MSP processes. Those and other data will help us to perform different types of analysis. The conventional one is a descriptive approach where we see the different activities in the MSP and their relationship, but we can go deeper and analyze what is the impact of allocating a given space for a given use, or the trade-offs between different uses. Likewise, we can analyze the impact of implementing an MSP plan, measuring the direct, indirect, and induced effects. Considering that, considering that half of the countries worldwide have some sort of plan available, we may assume that we have those types of analysis also available worldwide. Unfortunately, we do not. And there are 3 reasons. The first one, we lack data, in particular for some dimensions like the social dimension, or those data are not systematically gathered. Whenever we have the data, we may lack quality of data, for instance, for certain specific sectors, mentioned seabed mining or others. And when we have data that have been gathered systematically through time, like with the economic data, what we find often is something like this. We see historical series aggregated with trends at national level or sea basin level. And for those natural scientists in the room and in the call, this will be similar to present environmental data for MSP purposes at national level. This information lacks the spatial component that is critical for MSP. There has been significant advances by disaggregating the information, in particular economic information, at lower levels. Notes, for those not familiar with the language, a footnote is available, but this is a progress, but it's still missing where the value is created. We know where the activity is taking place in terms of administrative borders, but we don't know where the value is created. The spatial component is missing. And in this context is where the socioeconomic groups come into play. And we thank both chairs of the TEG group for creating this space to address some of those challenges. We have 3 simple goals: to deliver a practical output, to fill in knowledge gaps, and to support evidence-based policymaking. And to do so, we use a triangulation of methods, including literature review, a survey to MSP planners in the European Union, and expert knowledge. The literature review started quite promising in terms of looking for economic impact assessments. But when we screen through the documents available, what we have found is that the topic has received limited attention in the literature, and it's dominated by descriptive analysis of the economic activities in the maritime area. So the methodological developments are basically scarce. Through the survey, we have understood better the kind of data, socioeconomic data, that are used. This refers to European marine spatial plans. And socioeconomic indicators are scarce, and when they are dominated mainly by gross value added, production value, and employment, which other information mainly not used. And the data are from short historical time series. This is quite tricky when we are trying to assess social and economic impacts where we need really long time series. What is more relevant is that no socioeconomic data is integrated in any of the visualization tools. So we cannot see where that information is linked to. And these have happened also at European level until recently, as we will see. So with the expert knowledge available in the group, particularly from José Luis Santiago, we tried to advance in tackling some of the problems, developing a methodological approach that is based in input-output techniques. Just a reminder, the group is not searching to describe economic activities. That will be kind of fishy, so to put it like that. We are trying to address critical MSP questions. For instance, are there economics or social benefits that derive from the systems of the plan? So the methodological approach is quite tricky, and I will do my best to simplify it in 6 basic steps. The first one is to identify the sectors. It seems easy, but it's not, because you have to decide this is a sector. Within this sector, sorry, it's kind of annoying. Within this sector, what economic activity, let's say fisheries, within fisheries, what specific main activities are included? And with some sectors, it's straightforward. But when you think in tourism, for instance, you have to disentangle what activity is happening at sea or in the maritime area and what activity belongs to the land activity. Once we have those sectors identified, we quantify the real evolution of that activity, and then we look to the creation of what-if scenarios. What would have been the evolution of that particular sector if the plan was not in place? After those scenarios are created, we estimate the initial direct impact. But you probably know that economic and social developments are affected by a lot of contextual factors. So the evolution of a sector may be conditioned by an economic crisis, just to mention an example. So we go and perform a stakeholder consultation to gain a better understanding of any contextual factor that may be affecting the performance of that given activity. For instance, in renewable energy, the approval of a new regulation or whatever other process in that sense. And with that readjustment of the estimations, we calculate the direct, indirect, and induced impact. All this is being published, and the references are included already in the presentation. I would like now to put in value the benefits of contributing in joint efforts, because, and you will hear more about the EMODNet portal later on, but it was through the combination of the EMODNet human activities and the work of the TEG that we were able to progress further in terms of socioeconomic dimension. And just to frame what we are going to see now, what we have available in EMODNet is not only the current activities, maritime activities that are relevant, for instance, wind energy, but also the planned activities and the areas that have been identified as potential for that economic activity. Combining the methodological approach and this kind of information, we are able to make economic information spatially explicit. So we do not only say, hey, this activity is value, I'm sorry you cannot see behind the view of the room, there is a 5 million. So it's not only saying this activity is valued 6 million, we are able to zoom in and say 5 million at that particular polygon. Thank you very much, Christina. And this activity 1 million, which makes a whole of a difference in terms of planning. Likewise, we are able to use economic and social information for decision making. We are not only saying, hey, this activity is valued at, but employment perhaps is concentrated in this particular area or in that particular one. And that may help in the analysis of the variables or elements that are relevant for the planning. We said we wanted to deliver knowledge for action. Here it is. This is the guidelines that is also available at the MSP platform. Thank you to the platform and to CINEA for making this possible. And in that, we included most of the findings that we have mentioned before, but also recommendations. And the first recommendation that is critical is do not wait to have the perfect data, because you will never start. So work with what you have now. And it was great also the lunch before, because chatting with Dina, she said, oh, there is no information. Yes, there is. Look at Eurostat and you will have a lot of economic information that could be at service for your particular uses. And when there is no information, use qualitative knowledge to fill in the gaps and start working. Also try to search for other synergies. This is European bias, but I am sure that worldwide there are many other initiatives on socioeconomic dimensions that could be of service. There are many different ways to advance, and some of them can be promoted by the public authorities, for instance, linking the permissions and licenses in the plan to the provision of specific data. And others can be just the job of scientists in terms of developing proxies that may help us to cope with current challenges. And also, let's start testing what works and what's not. And in particular, pilot tests and projects that are ongoing are quite useful, and as I hope to show in a minute. In relation to that, I think that opportunities like this one are critical also to improve what we have done so far. And in that regard, allow me a small infomercial, because next month in Barcelona, in the frame of the United Nations Ocean Decade, 5 European projects on MSP, together with the Brazilian Ministry of Environment, will join together to discuss particularly climate-smart maritime spatial planning. So we would love to have you there for in-depth discussion on the topic, which includes, of course, the socioeconomic dimension. So, with all that, what is next? This is to be sure that we are accountant and committed to what we recommend. We said, use projects to showcase this is doable, and this is what we have done. Particularly in REMAP, that Andrea mentioned, we have advanced in merging the geographical information with the economic information. It's not only developing the methodological approach, it's showing it can be done. And with that, we combine the blue economy and the marine spatial planning into highly detailed information that could be of use and tailored to the particular needs of researchers, managers, and planners. Jose Luis Santiago is developing a model that combines economic information, geographical information, and what we referred before, the blue proportion of the economic activity. And when we look at the activity and where it happens, it makes things simple. I referred before to the complexities of tourism, but think also about the disaggregation of sea basins in the European countries that have double sea basins, and also the disaggregation at regional level or cross-regional among different countries that someone referred before. We have plenty of neighbors. This will be the output. We will be able to see the value of the production, the gross added value, and deployment. In fact, what we are doing is putting economic and social value to the marine space at the polygon level. And this has not been done before, to the best of our knowledge. Similarly, because Jose is an economist, but we like to push also in other directions, we want to progress on the social dimension. When we refer to social, we usually say employment because it's the proxy, but there are many things that we need to pay attention to. For instance, in terms of salary and gender. We want to start small. There are distribution effects and impacts that are relevant, but we are not there yet. So let's start small. Likewise, and again, I think this gives a connection to the first presentation by Andrej, using the Marine Spatial Planning Data Framework, we are doing good progress in terms of governance. There are plenty of analyses for governance that are hidden in endless reports. We are giving governance a spatial component too, and starting small with the basic attribute that governance needs to work in MSP, which is coordination. And we hope also in the near future to progress with participation too. So we hope with that you have seen at least a hint of the practical application that we consider is relevant for practitioners, researchers, managers, and planners. So please reach out if you are willing to engage in the discussion, if you are searching for specific information that we may help with, or if you just wish to share your experience. I've been struggling with this, and those are the bottlenecks or situations that I have faced. How can I handle it? So you have our contact there, and with that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Marta. Don't go anywhere. If we can get a Slido, I can see that there's quite a few questions, which may or may not be good. But we do have time. So, yeah, there's about 13, 14 questions, but obviously I won't ask you to answer all of them. No, of course you can. But should we start at the most popular? If you think it's in the socio-economic data, I mean, does it include information about conservation areas and ecosystem productivity, or is that probably doesn't come under your socio-economic?
Yeah, we said at the beginning we wanted to get practical, so we started with the basics. So we use a market value approach to economic activities. We are not going into these other topics that are needed, but the methodological approach is not yet there. It will be easier. There are plenty of findings in terms of environmental accounts and methodological approach that are there. But when you try to link that to the spatial component, then you create a lot of tensions. So Jose's view on that is let's start small. Let's be sure that all the power from the statistics coming from 50 years of gathering standardized economic information is bring to the space, and then let's try to move forward with these other approaches. Valuable, but we need to progress baby step by baby step.
Thank you, Marta. Maybe we can clear that question, Cristina, but social data can be even more diverse and can also take many different shapes. Not all of it is quantitative. How do you address the need to incorporate other types of data?
Again, I think this will be the key message. Social data are tricky. We have plenty of experience, for instance, in particular topics like fisheries, and we have had endless discussions. For MSP, what we have decided is to start with the best, worst available data, which is employment. Once we have employment at polygon level, disaggregated, I will be able to say, this is a person employed in the tourism maritime sector in this area. Once I have that kind of accuracy on the information, I will look for including other data. Is that good? No. Will that cover the whole social dimension? For sure not. I am a social scientist. I feel it. But this is how we can start.
Thank you. And I guess that partly answers this, the second question down, which, what key data do you find is most often excluded? Would that be employment, or that's just the data that's least available?
Okay, then I take the chance Jose is not here. So what we measure normally is what can be measured, what is easy to find. Employment, satisfaction, that could be tricky. So at the very end, you have essential data that is out of the equation. I work on governance. I could give you a list of 10, 15 variables that are critical for MSP and are not there. But to start with governance, for instance, we decided, let's look at the basic, coordination. If you don't have coordination, it's really hard to make MSP working. There are plenty of other data that are critical for governance. I will kill myself for accepting this one only, but this is where to start. Again, the same approach, pragmatical approach to all variables.
Okay, I can see one in the room. Which way am I going? Over here, Natalie? I'm gonna jog. Okay.
Mark, it's always a pleasure to hear you, and IMODNET for me is one of the most clever examples of metadata application. And like social data changes very fast. So how can like this issue, this obstacle can be correct? For example, if there is not the risk that you use one social data to arrive somewhere, and as soon as you arrive there, this data already changed.
Okay, so then I will honor the beauty of collaborating with data people, because for me has been a really learning process. Data from the social and economic dimension need to be as robust, as accurate as they are for the natural science dimension. Social data are not perceptions. Economic data are not whatever thing that you gather quickly to rubbish everything together and say, this is it. We need to have systematic data gathering that is standardized, harmonized, and compatible. Unfortunately, social and economic, not so much, but social data are lagging 50 years. And what we are doing with a specific sectors approach can be applied also to MSP. Let's start with the basic, even worse information. I have seen cultural variables. I have seen everything that I will ask for. But those guys told me, no, that is not harmonized, standardized, usable, and it's not able, even if I can gain a lot of deep understanding for a given area, it's not able to dialogue with the environmental data. Oh, it's not able to dialogue with the safety navigation. So if I can have a clear understanding of something for my own, it's not useful for marine spatial planning. So baby steps. First one, worst, best available data. Second, let's use the resources to start systematic data calls. In the European Union, for instance, in fisheries, we have systematic data calls for social and economic variables. And once you do systematic data calls for those other aspects that are in an expert group or in a project, we decided this is critical and should be on the table, let's do pilot initiatives to see what data or what proxies could be gathered that will fill into that kind of information.
Thank you very much. Let's go for a few more questions. Anyone else in the room? Oh, Celine, you're still waving, sorry.
I give the floor.
You've decided to ignore me, Chris, it's fine. No, yeah, I was just wondering, coming back to IMODNET, and since a lot of the data you presented apply quite well to polygons, and so do you think, I don't know, in a close or more distant future, this kind of data could be included in IMODNET, and where, how would it be in the human activity portal then? Thank you.
Okay, the straightforward answer will be yes. The additional or complementary answer will be, let's not duplicate information where it is available elsewhere. So Eurostat has a lot of databases that are nicely there. what EMODNet brings to the table is the geographical component. So the beauty is the brain behind this work, which is Jose Luis Santiago, is also the brain behind EMODNet Human Activities MSP. So he's really clever in bringing all together to make the most in terms of not duplicating efforts and optimizing the resources for both sides. So for sure, how soon, I cannot answer, but for sure that is the path that we are following.
Any more questions from the room? I don't want to be accused of ignoring anyone else. No? I'm going to take the second question here, Marta, but I'm going to reframe it slightly, just on the basis that the idea of land-sea interaction comes up a lot. Now, we're talking about socio-economic impacts here of MSP, but it's hard to separate economy and value chains simply at the coastal border. So building on this, the need for data to address onshore needs that can be met offshore, how does this land-sea interaction, how is this addressed within the work that you've done?
Yeah, we built on the shoulders of previous work. So there was two specific efforts to develop methodological approaches to cut the cake, as I say, or disentangle economic activities. So to be able to define accurately how much of a given activity belongs to what is happening at sea and how much of that activity that is entangled is happening inland. So you have specific data with formulations and economic approaches that will guide you in that process. What is different, if I can, because I saw something on what is different from land, yeah? So if we think about a farm, we can confine the geographical scope of that farm in specific coordinates in an area. If we think in fisheries, we can easily map the distribution of fish inland, but it's highly complicated to assign value to where the fishery is caught in a given moment at sea. So the complexities are all included in those reports, and I invite the ones interested in to look at the guidelines and to the papers and reports quoted.
Okay, I will release you in 1 minute. There was a question there just to take into account that we've got a lot of representatives from outside of the EU. There's a question on there that can this process be replicated anywhere? They said, for example, Africa, but anywhere, okay? And I give the choice to you. If there's one more question on there that you would like to pick up, Christina, perhaps you could scroll. Martha could have a little look if there's anything of particular interest.
I will answer, if you don't mind, on the transferability, because I think that it was part of our commitment. It can be applied anywhere. And then how imaginative you need to be in the application depends on your situation. And there is no crystal clear situations. You may have a data-rich situation for a given sector, but perhaps data poor for other. Or you may not have a statistical information gathered for the last 40 years, but you may have better access to some sectors in a particular area. So go through the guidelines, have a look to what has been done, and be smart in using qualitative information or proxies where the data are not. It will not be perfect, but it will be a start. And if you have any doubt or particular interest, please feel free to contact us. And
if I may, can I ask a question?
Oh, I don't know. Is that allowed?
The last minute.
Okay.
Okay, so based on this response, Marta, we know that a lot of countries have their MSP plans. Some of them are revisiting their plans. Do you know if any of these countries have used such a methodology in their plans or are willing to use? And if yes, how easy is for them to do it?
From the survey and the evidence we have, we know that there is a mismatch between the relevance of the socioeconomic dimension and how much it has been used in marine spatial planning. And it's not a lack of will from the member states or anyone. It's just that plans were so complex at the very beginning to put everything together that, let's put it nicely, socioeconomics became the topic. at the very end, just let's put some figures there, because there were many struggles to be addressed. We are aware that in the next iteration, many member states are searching for support in order to address this properly. We recommend two things. There are plenty of economists out there that would love to give you support, and sometimes we try to think or tend to think narrowly. We need a planner. Put an economist in your life. I am not an economist, just to clarify that. But there are plenty of people at universities with expertise on those methodological approaches, and supporting with these guidelines, the TEG group and the many projects around, they can do it. And we will become better the more we try and compare what we are doing already.
Thank you very much, Marta. Thank you. I'm going to pass the floor to Stefano. Christina, if we can load his...
And just to remind to everyone, if you can speak as close to the microphone as possible, because we have people online and they have given us feedback that the sound is much better when we are a little annoying for the room, but much better for the rest participants.
Okay, I will try. Yes, just check. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Within this brief session, the idea is to talk about another topic that is covered by the technical expert group. That is the relationship and the linkages between the marine strategy and the MSP. And today's presentation is subdivided in two parts. We have first part that we are going to describe directly the activity that the TEG has carried out in the last 2 years. And we are going to describe a report, brief report that has been just published a couple of days ago, that is going to summarize all the results. And then in the second part, we are going to present, my colleague Alessandro will present a module of the REMAP project that is strictly dedicated to investigate in more detail the connections between the marine strategy and the MSP, especially from a data point of view. Of course, it is the main topic. And because this REMAP module is strictly connected with the activity of the TEG, it was inspired by the TEG results, so they are strictly connected. Okay, so let's start from the TEG activity. Actually, there is a dedicated subgroup, like the subgroup that was presented before, that involved more or less 14 peoples now, and from 6-7 countries. This subgroup received the support, and would like to thank from the MSP platform, DG MARE, CINEA, and recently also by the DGM that revised our work. It was very important contribution to have a good result at the end. But why we started to deal with this topic? Yes, because as mentioned before, the MSP need the best available data, but at the same time, there is a specific requirement regarding in the Article 5 that require an ecosystem-based approach in the entire process, okay? And the marine strategies is a fundamental source for obtaining reliable data regarding the condition of the marine environment, and consequently for incorporating the ecosystem-based approach into the MSP. So there is a strict connection to directly support to this requirement. But also, this was clear also in analyzing the answer from the experts. There is an expectation, we will see, to use the marine strategy data in MSP to support the evaluation and monitoring of the plan. This is an important point of, okay. So we started with this specific question. We have tried to clarify, we would like to clarify how the national MSP processes have incorporated so far the implementation of the marine strategy, particularly focusing on data. So we have tried to analyze how the data from marine strategy has been incorporated at country level, into the plan. And to provide on that some analysis, reflection, and recommendation. This was the initial assessment that we have tried to investigate. So the workflow is quite straightforward. Within these 2 years, there was an initial survey that we have designed and implemented online. And we received the contribution of the MSP experts. The experts that were, many of that were involved in the plan. And they know how the data were used, has been used within the plans. Then we have performed an analysis of this data, and that I'm going to present in the moment, the results. And of course, we have write this report that it was just published. Okay, the survey. This is an important part, because we have structured the survey in 5 main blocks. Okay, 5 main blocks. The first one is the background coherence. We started to investigate if there is, which is the level of coherence between the implementation of the 2 directives at country level in terms of policies, competent authorities, spatial coherence, and temporal one. A second block, section of the survey was dedicated, is the core of the survey, by the way, dedicated to investigate the data usage, marine strategies data usage within the plan, and specifically subdivide the plan in 4 main steps. We have simplified a bit the common structure of a plan, identify 4 main steps. So initial preparation, analysis and interpretation, planning, and evaluation and monitoring. Then we have investigated in the third section, what we can call semantic interoperability between the 2 processes regarding the common glossaries and vocabularies and the terminologies in general. In the 4th block, then we have investigated the technological interoperability, if there is some common data sharing strategy, if there a common use of the spatial data infrastructure, so data infrastructure to gathering the data and to share the data between the 2 processes. And finally, there was an add-on, is not strictly connected with the other one, regarding latency interaction, but we are not covering it today. Yeah. The survey was what we can call this survey semi-structured survey. There was some already predefined guidelines that facilitate the gathering of the information, the fill-in of the information by the respondents, and using some scales, qualitative scales from one side, but also we are also interested to receive directly comments, notes, recommendation directly regarding the answer, but also more general recommendation that the expert can provide us. We received 13 responses by 13 different countries, covering, it is quite representative of the different sea basins, as you can see from the Baltic, also the Black Sea, Mediterranean, Atlantic, and North Seas, and from north to south. So it is quite well represented. It is a quite well representation of the variabilities also of the plan within the EU. Okay, some brief results, just to summarize. So regarding the coherence, we have received, the coherence was addressed, there was, the majority of the respondents identify a medium level of coherence between the 2 policies. And one of the main reasons that was explained in this assessment was that Interrelation exists between the two policies, but there are no shared pathways or specific joint actions. So when we receive this medium level of coherence, this was one of the most common comment. Regarding the spatial scale, the majority are high level, so the majority of the countries identify high and medium level, more or less at the same percentage. When we receive medium or low level, one comment was that the MSP considered mainly spatially in that country and temporally oriented, while the MSP is not formulated with a strong spatial component. This is just one comment. This doesn't mean that all countries has these issues. This is just one of the reasons that we receive maybe a low assessment, low level of the assessment. Regarding temporal scale, the majority of we have the majority of the answer for a medium level and low level because the two processes started at different times and have different cycles. However, there is an expectation, this is quite important, that there will be alignment in the next round of the vision. So there is an expectation from the planners to receive more data in the next cycle from the MSP. Finally, regarding the competent authorities, usually there is a high level of coherence. In some cases, however, the two processes were taking place under different competent authorities, and this is usually an issue because there is more difficulties in sharing the data. Regarding instead the data integration, you can see here 4 graphs for each level of the plan. For the 3 steps of the plan, initial preparation, analysis, interpretation, and planning, usually we receive a medium level of data integration, but there are differences in the type of data. There is mainly qualitative data for the initial preparation from the marine strategy, so basically the data of the reports. Then we have mainly quantitative data from the analysis interpretation, so the data by the GES, or especially the raw data of the indicators provided in the marine strategy, and the mix of qualitative and quantitative data for the planning stage. Completely different. Okay, another observation is that in some cases the data of the marine strategy were combined with other sources, like it was mentioned, if I'm not wrong, ACOBAMS for the Mediterranean, or other surveys that complement the marine strategy data in order to produce this sort of essential map to base the plan. A completely different pattern instead is quite clear for the evaluation and monitoring, because due to the early stages of many plans implementation, the correlation with marine monitoring and evaluation is largely unknown. But as we will see in a moment, there is a great expectation on that to improve this quality of integration. And usually, regarding the data sharing strategy, there are some issues in shared information. It's quite difficult to, there is clear statement from the, clear comment from the expert that there is some issues in collect directly the information from the facilities from the marine strategy. In the report, we also provide some analysis by country level, where we have tried to combine the countries were anonymized in order, but we have investigated the combination between maybe if there is some there are some patterns between the coherence and the level of integration, but I'm not going to detail now. Just move to some lesson learned and further suggestion. What we have understood, I think it is quite important. So the first part is, the first item is the common policy objectives and cooperation between the competent authorities are essential to facilitate the integration data between the two processes. Maybe quite obvious, but in some cases it's not true. So this is also an expectation to improve this collaboration. The second point is really important because there is a clear opportunity to align and integrate marine strategy, data collection, analysis in the last stage of the MSP plan evaluation monitoring. That at the moment is not well covered, but is a real high level expectation to use as much as possible the marine strategy data through the use of data from the marine strategy monitoring and the assessment of environmental status. However, there is an issue that was raised by the expert in cases of scale mismatch between the marine strategy and the MSP planning elements. The integration of marine strategy data into the plan processes is difficult and reduces the potential for future improvement. So probably we have also to try to take into account these spatial issues that is not so trivial to address. Improved access to raw quantitative data such the marine strategy indicators is seen as crucial to effectively support the planning processes rather than solely relying on descriptive data on just values. So this is another point, very important. So there is the need to directly access to the raw data that at the moment is not so simple. Also using the last update of the WISE Marine doesn't provide this data, but it will be better explained by Alessandro later. Then establish matching working protocols. Moving to a more technical level, there is the need to establish more matching working protocol for institutions and technicians working in both areas of MSP and marine strategy. Improve data sharing facilities, encourage sharing of all data information. This is connected with the first point, including qualitative raw data and collecting data by the monitoring program. Of course, there is an expectation to enhance interoperability, also to ensure systematic and automated access to the marine strategy data, but also maybe improve the technological interoperability through implementation of interoperable standards, services, and APIs to use automatically, in automatic way, this data. And finally, there is some maybe a couple of points that can be better investigated to improve the analysis and to make it more robust. Of course, one important point will be to expand the analysis to assess additional factors that may influence the quality of data integration. We have recognized in the data, there are not, but this is not statistically significant, that there are maybe some differences in, for example, regarding the countries that have completely different size in the marine space have different issues and different level of data integration. This would be maybe better investigate. We can enhance the analysis to include more maritime, more EU countries. This will be very important to improve the analysis, as well as organizing depth interviews to identify some best cases or best example that can be used as an example also for other countries. But especially it would be very interesting. So far we have starting from an MSP point of view, but it would be very interesting to extend the scope of the survey to better include the marine strategy viewpoint. For example, to initiate collaboration with a specialized group focused on data information within the context of the marine strategy, such as the WGDIC and TEG data from the DGM will be provide a very new viewpoint that can be integrated and facilitate the collaboration. Now I will leave the floor to my colleague. Alessandro, if you want to that he's going to present the remap, as said before, connection that are strictly related with this analysis.
Okay, I try. Does it work like this? Like this, I try, okay. Okay, so the module I'm going to introduce is part of the remap modules that have been mentioned before. So a key part of the remap rationale is to reuse the operational infrastructure, allowing interoperability and enabling member states to share MSP data and assessment information. So the reuse of existing operational infrastructure, one of the main one is for sure the whole infrastructure set up by the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, which is, I mean, very, very important. Is the pillar of the environmental policy of the EU. So, which is this connection between MSP data and MSF data? In this module aims exactly to explore and analyze this relationship, and especially with the spatially explicit MSFD reporting. So what is the spatial MSFD reporting? In the first part of this module, we analyzed which are the main steps and the main data flows between the MSFD directive, the MSP directive, and several data repositories which are involved. In the marine strategy, some key issues data are deriving from the monitoring, the marine strategy monitoring itself. Many other data are coming from other sources, like the Water Frame Directive data, or like from the Copernicus service, or for socioeconomical data from Eurostat, for instance. So there are many sources involved, but there is a key source that is monitoring. All these data are then processed during the assessment part of the marine strategy process, and this is to generate, to create the status data, which are the status which are used to evaluate the good environmental states of the marine, of the EU marine areas. When the good environmental states is not reached, or to maintain it, measures are another key instruments of the marine strategy. Member states need to define measures, and among this kind of measure, there are several types of measures. Among this type of measure, there are spatial and temporal distribution controls, and this is something with overlaps. This is MSP. So after this analysis, we identified 2, maybe 3 main kinds of spatial data in the marine strategy process, which can be of interest for the spatial plannings. And these are the so-called indicators, as they are called in the marine strategy terminology, which are monitoring data and process data, which are processed during assessment to get the assessment results. And the other kind of data are the assessment results itself, which indicates the status of marine waters in reference to good environmental status. And an important thing of this data is that they are associated to the marine reporting units, which are special units defined in a very peculiar way. We will talk later about that. Also, measures have a special dimension, but we are still working on the use of measures, but we can anticipate that in theory it will be possible to have also measures in this module. So what we are going to use now, the module now, the prototype is working with assessment results. Which are these assessment data? I don't want to go into much detail now because it's complicated, but there are three levels of status data. The overall assessment data, which tell us where the gas has been achieved or not, and it refers to 11 descriptors divided in 52 features. Features are like species groups, habitat types, ecosystems, anthropogenic pressures, and so on. And then we have the criteria assessment data, which are, there are 42 criteria, which defines if each of the associated element is in good status or not. Then we have the element assessment and also the parameter assessment, which are associated to the element. But I don't want to go really into much detail in this. This is just to show the marine reporting units. So all the values, all the status values will be associated to this polygonal areas, which are the marine reporting unit. As you can see, there is a high heterogeneity and diversity in the shape of this area. Okay, and this is one kind is the marine strategy spatial input data of the module. These are the spatial plans that everybody knows. So this is a diagram which shows the two kinds of input data of the module, which are, as I said, the planned uses, which they can derive from eModnet, or they can be also custom data draft plans, and the MSFD data, which are coming from Wise Marine or AUNet. Both services can provide these data. Although Wise Marine has a more organized and accessible platform. So the module performs spatial overlays, spatial overlay analysis on this data, and it can provide results from a planner point of view, for a marine spatial planner point of view, and for an MSP point of view. Sorry, for an MSFD user's point of view. So in the first case, we will get maps with the relation between uses and the status and associated statistics. And on the opposite, for the the MSFD point of view, we will have use statistics associated to the marine reporting units. Okay, let's just to see an example. Let's select an use, which can be raw material extraction. We have we can see an example. This is just a mock-up. It's not the module. It's just an example. And we can see, okay, starting from all our plans, we can select one use. In this case, is the raw material extraction. We select the use and eventually the use function and whatever. And what the module gets are all the value, all the status value associated. So we have here overall gas status for features and descriptor and country, criteria status with all the associated components, element status, and the associated parameters to each element, if it was achieved and its trend. This was just to show how it could be, the module, the interface of the module. The module can perform a control on the quality of the data. One possibility is to use a spatial coherence index. This is an index which is used to make a comparison among the geometry of the maritime reporting unit and the associated use, which are the zoning element of the plans. The more similar the planned areas are to the marine reporting unit, the greater the spatial coherence and therefore the reliability of the data connected to them. So this is the rationale behind this coherence index. It varies depending on the use, because each use can have can impact on different marine reporting unit. Okay. Another guided analysis. This is something which was derived from the test that we had already with our stakeholders. There was an indication to be guided, to introduce a guide for the user to have some priority components shown first associated to a use. So, for example, if a user is selecting, again, raw material extraction, first will be shown to show the values, the status values, the pressures, and the impact environmental receptors which are associated to that use, who is most likely to affect the environment. And this can be done on a predefined use pressure impact chain, which derives from all the work the CINEA, our group, is doing, and also in REMAP, other groups are doing in the, on the cumulative impact assessment. And yeah, okay, and so this is, you can see there are some descriptors, to make it simple, some descriptors can be associated to some uses. Okay, so concluding, some key messages. Which limitation do we have? We need to have harmonized data from monitoring across EU. As I was saying, we are not selecting to use these indicators, so-called spatial data. They will be very useful, but there is really a need to have them harmonized. A recent report was on 2023 of the Commission, not a report actually, was a communication of the Commission based on a JRC report. It's showing that there are a lot of problems of coherence for the monitoring data, for the marine strategy monitoring data, a lot of gaps and coherence problems among member states. Concerning the assessment data, there are anyway many data gaps in 2018. We expect new data in 2024. So actually this module hopefully will work also with new data. There could be comparisons and trends between the 2018 and the 2024 data. The other issue are the marine reporting units. They are too heterogeneous across EU, and this gives different results, not homogeneous results across the European seas. So the strength, the module can be useful both for marine spatial planners, but also for people involved in the marine strategy implementation. There will be a reliable data quality check embedded in the module to provide an idea of the reliability of the status values that we associated to a specific use. After the alpha test, we received precious feedbacks, so there is still room for improvement of this module. Wise Marine is steadily improving its capacity to provide access to marine strategy data. The module will use the same graphic approach to facilitate understandability and spreading of a common language. And in general, we believe that in general, the module itself can facilitate this exchange of information, because the idea to put together, to combine information coming from the MSP side and Marine Strategy Framework Directive, it's a step forward, achieving a better coherence. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you, Alessandro. I'm going to get this microphone, and you can share it, and you can choose who best to answer a given question. We do still have some time, so we can go through a number of these questions. There was a question a bit further down, which suggests that perhaps it's worth going back one step, Stefano, and that was just, why are we trying to link the MSP and MSFD? Why MSFD and not other directives? This one, yeah, from Manuel Frias. So I think maybe for people that are not so familiar with the directives, could you just explain why it is that you're looking at this between MSP and MSFD?
Is it working? Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mentioned it in the, no, this is a good question. I mentioned in one of the first slides that there is a statement in the directive to, okay, yeah, that there is a statement in the directive that requires that the MSP process have to incorporate an ecosystem-based approach. This, and there is the marine strategy mentioned in some part of the directive as well. And especially because also the water framework directive in the coastal area can be an overlap, would be another good point to also enlarge the analysis to the water framework directive. And but of course, the marine strategy is the directive that has the majority of spatial overlap, temporal overlap, and a lot of possibility to, and especially because in our practice, we have seen that a lot of plans have used the MSD as a background information to implement their own plan. Of course, we can enlarge. This is just a starting point. We start to analyze. We can enlarge to other directives, but it was a sort of test because there are a lot of connections that can be explored in this sense. So, yeah, it is recommended. So we have to explore.
Alessandro, you want to add something?
Just that, yeah, the marine strategy and MSP are really entangled together. I mean, as I was saying, the spatial measures foreseen by the marine strategy are basically marine spatial planning measure. So there is a very big connection in that. And marine spatial planning needs, how do you say, a knowledge of the state of the sea, of the trend and the evolution of the sea for the planning. And this is what the MSFD is doing. I personally see MSP as a part of the marine strategy, the whole marine strategy. And it is declared as a part of the integrated maritime policy of the EU. The two instruments are really linked together. And concerning, the question was also about water frame. Why not water frame? Water frame is embedded in a way in the marine strategy framework. Many descriptors, many criteria and elements are actually derived directly from elements of the Water Frame Directive. So there is this connection. And anyway, as I was saying, the analysis we saw, many data are coming for both marine spatial planning and marine strategy from the Water Frame Directive.
Thank you, Alessandro. I'm checking the room in case I get accused. Okay, here we are. I'm going to go over here.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Mr. Baruti. I'm an academic involved in shipping and maritime issues, including maritime spatial planning, because I took an active part in the International Conference on Maritime Spatial Planning held 2 years in Barcelona. And just two short comments, because the presentation of Stefano gave me an idea when he raised the issue of different vocabulary and conception. We realized during the Maritime Spatial Conference held in Barcelona that many terms and concepts used at European level are applied in many places of the world, but not with the same name. That gives me the opportunity to react to the question asked to Marta, if this could, MSP could be applied to other space and places. I say yes, but we should make sure that there are not already the same aspect of issue is implemented by those parts of the world, but with the different name. That's the first short. The second is relating to the Andres, because it's the first we spoke about the OCEA governance. I took an active part in the Aero Maritime in Marseille in January, and many speakers are complaining that European authorities give the impression to close eyes when some external partners try to not to comply with with global legislation, but are very severe on European actors. And that is the question. Yes, the issue I want to ask you is, because it's an expert workshop, I have you the same impression that European authorities, they didn't name those external actors, but I know that they refer to China. On the European water, from time to time, external partners use to violate international legislation, but they don't feel that the European authorities are strong on that kind of provocation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baruti. I mean, with regards to your second point, I think perhaps no one in this room is adequately equipped to respond to that question. But certainly on your first point, I know this is a discussion we've had even at EU level. The challenges in different member states having slightly different coding, different language, different descriptions for the same activities. So even at the EU level, we've found this challenging. But thank you very much for your comment. I'm going to come back to Slido briefly. There's a top question here about climate change. Stefano, Alessandro, I think it's partly responded to below. Christina, if you can go down a bit more. I think it says that there are plans to incorporate climate change into the MSFD. Keep going. A lot of questions. Bit more. There are moves to include climate change in MSFD, perhaps even as a descriptor, but likely as a feature under multiple existing descriptors. Is there anything on that, Stefano, Alessandro, you want to add, or does that adequately respond?
I think it looks like more a comment to the previous questions. I think that's the answer to the first question, which was: why is climate change not considered in the marine strategy? And somebody who is replying that it's going to be.
It's just if you want to add anything.
Yeah, to add is okay.
Thank you. Yeah, just a small comment, because it came back a lot, this complementary between MSP and MSFD. And as you might know, we are currently reviewing MSFD. So these are elements that we really take into consideration. And I think your work is very valuable in that context and will feed as well this review. And that's the same for climate change. It's clear that it's a bit lacking from the directive at the moment. So something we are thinking on how to include it, and yeah, what's the best way to do that. So similar thing, and data is very high up in the agenda of the review as well. So thanks again for this work. I think it's also important on this policy level. Yeah.
Should we take one more question? Stefano, Alessandro, would you like to pick one? There's one there regarding recommendations, or perhaps there's one, a different one that you'd like to look at. What do the results mean in real? How can lessons be applied in other places?
Yeah, but regarding the previous one, what would your recommendation be regarding issuing? Yeah, there is, as mentioned by Alessandro, there is an important effort, let's say, by the marine strategy to, I'm talking from an MSP point of view, but of course, as mentioned before, it is quite important to start also from the marine strategy, because the MSP can support the marine strategy implementation, practically applying the measures that the marine strategy identify. And of course, regarding from an MSP point of view, the effort that was included in the Wise Marine was not implemented when there was we spread the survey. So some of the issues that were recognized by the expert actually using Wise Marine was solved, because it provides an harmonized interface and a quite high-level interface that can be used not just by the expert but also by high-level user to explore the data and the result. So, of course, Wise Marine can be seen as a good point to move towards a real data sharing that can support the plant directly. Maybe make it more interoperable from a technical point of view will be a great next step. So I think there is a lack in the standardization to access this data in an automatic way. This could be a further step to make it more useful also, and using this data through some tools, automatically through tools or web application. If there will be also these next steps, maybe it's already planned or is there and I'm not was able to recognize, it will be a great step to move towards this interoperable level, this services level to the Wise Marine. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. Thank you very much, Stefano. And thank you to everyone that spoke in the first session. We are going to break now for lunch, not lunch, coffee. That was hopeful. For 30 minutes. So this would mean we come back at 4:05 in Central European time. Just a reminder that after this we have another session on the different data models that are available to support the harmonization of MSP within Europe, and then a roundtable. Obviously, we've still got over 200 people online, so we won't be able to open the microphones. So the roundtable will primarily be in the room, but people online are very welcome to listen. And we will see you after the coffee break. Thank you very much. Online, I hope you had a very nice a little break. Just a reminder, the Slido code is on the screen. We invite you to submit your questions for the Q&A for the final session. We're just waiting for the people to take their seats. And a reminder, after this session, there is a round table. We will have Slido open so that those of you online can participate in the round table. But unfortunately, we won't be able to open the microphones because there are a lot of you online. Can I ask for the first presentation, the next presentation to be loaded, Christina? And I take the opportunity to introduce Joni Kaitaranta, who is the other co-chair of the TEG. Joni and Andre have been co-chairs of the TEG since it started in 2018. And Joni, please, I pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Chris. I hope I managed the microphone choreography properly. So this presentation is about setting the scene for development of the EU MSP data layer. And basically, there will be 3 presentations. I will start with presenting the recommendation document that the TEG group prepared. Then it will be followed by presentation given by Marta on behalf of Jose to kind of display where we are with the MSP output data availability in IMODNet. Then there will be also a presentation by Stefano on the MSP output data module in the REMAP project. Basically, we are doing this today, presentations in a bit reverse order, because the group actually started their work with developing this MSP output data guideline. And the content of my first presentation is that first we look into the needs from the MSP directive, like what did the directive say is needed from the plans, what kind of requirements there are. Then second step is what was already emerging from different projects. Then we look into the harmonization work done by the TEG group and also where are we now currently. So the needs from the directive are basically we need to think what the member states need to do. Of course, they have to prepare a lot of different kind of input data, which is required for the MSP plan, like existing sea uses, marine traffic, all that. The presentation by Andre in the beginning presented this in these different clusters. So that is kind of a framework for what member states need to do. And this framework describes one potential way to carry out this data collection. Then the directive says that the MSP plans must be coherent, like there is this quote from the directive, but there is no electronic reporting obligation of the plan, so it can be PDF or whatever. But there was the need that it would definitely be nice if there would be plans in electronic, interoperable, comparable format. So there was the idea to develop these kind of data models that would allow assessing coherence and also, first of all, to have them on the same map from different countries, the MSP plans. So there was already emerging work from different projects that were kind of organically grown and funded with the aim of having this single map of plans from different countries and a target data model for this harmonization. In the Baltic, there was the Pan-Baltic Scope project, where they developed this HELCOM-WASAP guideline on transboundary output data structure. And in that guideline, there is definitions of these C-use descriptions like priority, reserved, allowed, restricted, forbidden. So this kind of a concept was developed. And the C-use vocabulary in that guideline mostly comes from the MSP directive. Then there was also the MARE-SP project, which developed the MSP-inspired data model, which extended the normal INSPIRE HILUX land use classification, and also developed this kind of a possibility to have a three-dimensional or more depth layers in the plant data. So a bit different, slightly different data models were emerging from these different projects. Then harmonization. The TEG work started in 2020. And thanks to these projects, there was no need to start from scratch because this pioneering work was done. And there was a lot of discussion about, like, should there be strict harmonization, which is like from a data scientist perspective, the ultimate goal always, or should there be flexibility and so-called user friendliness for the data provider, which on the other hand is the kind of spirit of the directive that the countries don't need to have exactly similar plans. There is some degrees of freedom in that. So there became this proposal on how to provide spatial data of the MSP plan. And I like this slide from Andrew today, where there was this 14 different standards and you end up with 15. So we had 2 standards and we ended up with 3. But there is a but in that from the data provider point of view, you can provide your data in any of the formats, but it's still compatible and it can be used in IMODNet. So they are kind of compatible plans, compatible data models, and flexible in that sense. And this document outlines the kind of simple guidance for a country to apply these models. And it has turned out that it's quite needed to have this kind of a national flavor in the plans. So it was indeed a good decision to leave this flexibility in the data models. So where are we now? This is a screenshot from the IMODNet map viewer, where we can see that quite many countries have already shared their MSP output data to the portal. And already from this map, we can see that there are some differences. So some countries use point-wise features, some use only polygons. That's one thing that this model allows flexibilities, and that's made use by the countries, and that's perfectly fine according to the guideline. And with that, I say thank you, and I hand over the floor to Marta to continue with the more in-depth information on IMODNet.
Thank you very much, Johnny. And while we wait for the presentation, I would like to remark something. Sometimes it's highly difficult for projects or regional organizations to show the impacts of their work. But in the case of HELCOM and MARE-SP, the spillover effects of those efforts are to be seen right now in the Human IMODNet portal. So thank you very much for that. Again, this is a host's presentation, and I will do my best to walk you through. And to date, Europe has the most comprehensive marine data network worldwide. And this data network, which is called IMODNet, is the ongoing project for more than 12 years, engaging more than 150 organizations that have been collecting data, delivering data products, and metadata with 4 specific attributes. The first one, quality assure. The second, harmonize. The third, interoperable. And the fourth, free of charge. And the portal has different thematics, including bathymetry, geology, chemistry, and one of them covers human activities. If you go to the portal now, you will find where human activities related to fisheries, aquaculture, but also cultural heritage, cables, energy, are taking place in Europe. Those are current activities. And luckily enough, we have enough evidence of the use of this information by companies, for instance, to design a multi-purpose platform for renewable energy, by governments, to identify the behavior of specific fleets in particular areas, and by researchers to implement their projects. And through the day, we have seen in the workshop many different applications of eModNet data layers. So it's worth its use, and it has multiple applications for different target groups. With that in mind, and considering the role that MSP has in terms of European policy and national policies, eModNet and the Commission fosters the creation of an MSP data layer. So if you go now to the portal, you will find 10 economic exclusive zones of member states already available. You may think 10 plans. I'm afraid not, because depending on the countries, we can have several plans according to their distribution of competencies and their geographical scope. The benefit of this data layer is that it's harmonized with the current maritime human activities. And for those not so familiar with the European Union, the marine spatial plans have 2 main features. First, as they should, respond to the particular characteristics of the social, economic, and political environment of our country. And the second, they are written in their own language. So this data layer works also as a kind of translator that helps us with the plurality of definitions and the commonalities that are there. And this data layer provides an up-to-date picture of both current and anticipated uses of the marine space in the European Union, allowing us not only to visualize, but also to compare across countries, uses, and activities. What are the assets of this data layer? The first one, and more important, if you go to the portal, you will have access to the harmonized MSP that allows for comparison, as well as to the original MSP, where you can grasp the nuances that are in the specific instrument for a given country. The second is that the information can be visualized, which is great, but you can also download the data for your specific purposes. And the third is that it can support policy process at multiple levels, being those European, member state, regional, or local. My goal now is to explain 2 main things. The first one, where the data come from and the process. And the second one, the functionalities that are available at the portal for you to make the most of the information. The data come from the official GIS data of approved plans. This is why some countries that may not have approved their plan yet are not uploaded at the portal, because eModNet relies on official data. So those countries that are looking at the portal saying, where is my plan or my project? Once you seal it and stamp it, we will start the process for harmonization. The data are reported by the member states and their GIS experts or portals. And with that information, the eModNet team goes using the data model available and harmonize it in a way that allows the comparison across countries, activities, and uses. that draft harmonized plan is then sent back to the member state so they can double check if there are some misunderstanding, some things that are not quite capturing the reality of the country or else. And with that, the plan is uploaded at the web. So once the plan is uploaded, what we can do is almost endless. We can visualize the current activities. For instance, the Belgium EEZ, sorry, the color is not so helpful with the light, but this is the Belgium Economic Exclusive Zone. And if we are interested in ocean energy, we can have a look to the current activities that are taking place, and we can zoom in specific activities, for instance, wind energy, and gather specific data on the number of turbines that are currently operative in the area. Adding the MSP data layer allows us to look to that information plus the future developments. So in this picture, for instance, we see that for Belgium, the provision is to increase significantly the space allocated for that activity, and also look at the cross-border cooperation that may be happening across countries. Similar example for active aggregate extraction areas. If I am a consultant, I want to forecast the development of that specific business in the next 5 years, I can have a clear indication of what the plan intends to have there. The same with seafaring, planning, and maritime transport. I said before that this data set allows to support policy processes. Let's imagine that I am a country, a region, a local authority trying to look to the creation of specific nature protected areas. Combining the human activities with the MSP data layer, I can have a look and check that those areas do not have any conflict with fishing vessels, with cargo fleet, or with any kind of vessels. And if the conflict is there, then I can find the channels to manage that particular situation. So we have created a lot of functionalities to facilitate the management of all that information. And if you go there now, and thank you, Alessandro, for showing before the functioning of the filters, you can have a look and look at the activities that are authorized already to be developed by country and by a specific use. You can look also to the activities that cannot be developed. For instance, we have a specific area where anchoring is not permitted. And just to showcase what I said before, you can go into all the details that include what is the regulation where this is already established. So official sources are detailed there. You can have a look to areas that are considered priority, for instance, transport routes in Estonia, or that have potential for being developed, like these natural conservation areas in Spain. It does not mean this is a natural conservation area already, but there are potential, according to the plan, for that area to be protected in the near future. And it also considers some specificities, like an activity may not be forbidden, but perhaps restricted in some areas or for some particular features. So you can have a look and get all the details there. So we may also combine functions and activities. So we use the filters from the member state, the use functions and the names. We filter by zoning areas, and then we filter again for a specific use, like fishing areas, and we will have a complete clear picture of a particular geographical zone. So how we get all that information? Please go to the EMODNet portal, follow on the catalog EMODNet Human Activities, Marine Spatial Planning, select the information to display, and check in the map, filtering according to your particular interest, whether you are a researcher, a company, a government authority, or else. The next steps in EMODNet, because I said at the very beginning this is an ongoing project, entail making the most of some of the things that we have discussed in here, because we are providing support to some member states in the harmonization of their plans. So initial plans came in their models. Now we are working further because some member states said, oh, the TEG model is great. I can choose between these three, the one that fits better my data, and use that one. So it makes it easier for them, and it makes it easier for representation at the EMODnet portal. Second, we are providing support to some member states that struggle with the technicalities of the process. And third, we are contributing through the technical expert group to harmonize, validate, and strengthen the communication with the member states. One of the key issues that we need to tackle is that there are so much information at the portal that sometimes it's difficult or challenging to be visualized, in particular when we talk about overlapping. So we have the best experts working on this, and you will see the result of that process really soon. With that said, please direct all your questions to José Luis Santiago from SETMAR, and I will be happy to answer the ones that are in my hand just right now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So actually we went to the EMODnet portal to implement this module. So it is, we are talking now about this module because it is almost completely based on the EMODnet data model, and but also to the EMODnet portal, as we will see in a moment. Yeah. The idea of this module is, as stated there, is exploratory data analysis for the MSP plans. Usually when a data scientist starts to deal with a new data set, it performs an exploratory data analysis. It's a sort of automatic analysis to extract standard statistic in order to have a first look of the data and try to understand in which direction go, where go into more detail, in which direction to go to better explore the data. So the exploratory data analysis, sorry, it has this specific meaning. So have an automatic procedure to analyze the MSP plans. Yeah, this is so systematic analysis of the EU Maritime Spatial Plan, especially the spatial representation that we have seen so far and presented by Yoni and Marta, to summarize their main characteristics and identify spatial patterns. It is, yeah, important to support all the stages of the plan, from the beginning, initial stages, to the last one, and also to compare the plan, to compare the plan between different countries in a transboundary context. This is the conceptual design of the module. We have the most important input that are exactly the MSP data layer, and specifically the data layer automatically downloaded from the EMODnet using the interoperable services provided by EMODnet. In this case, they are the WFS services. Then there is a module engine that performs some standard statistics, let's say, this exploratory data analysis to extract the basic statistics, spatial overlays, multi-use analysis, transboundary analysis, and also diagnosis. That is an important part. And then we have some output in terms of maps, statistics, graphs, dashboards, and so on. There is also, in some cases, an optional contribution. It is exactly what Marta showed before in a more automatic way, to automatically analyze and compare the spatial distribution of the plans with some standard layer at EU level, like the bathymetry or maritime transport. in order to extract some comparative analysis, but just for these two layers that are well established at EU level. So the input was already quite well explained, but we are interested specifically to these characteristics of the data model. The geometry, of course, but also the CU's names and the CU's function. And regarding the CU's names, we are interested to analyze all the four type of CU's name that we can have in the model now. Also try to maintain the original name in order to, maybe the statistics can change from the harmonized version to the original one, and this could be very useful to understand in which way the plan has been transformed and converted and harmonized. Some outputs can be, as said before, some base statistic by member state, for example, the number of zoning elements, the total area, the main area by, for each zoning elements, or the EU statistic by member state. So combine not just the zoning element, but they use. So maybe the surface associated to the different maritime activities. We can produce this map regarding to this statistic. The module will produce some comparative analysis between the selected member state, selected by the users. We will see an example below, or some, and this is some example of graphs that the module can be produced. Another advanced outputs can be, for example, the comparison analysis with the bathymetry advanced stencil and produce this kind of statistics. We are developing a multi-use analysis. This is quite useful. We have tested for the MSP, Italian MSP plan, and we will show, and I'm going to show an example in a moment. Or some advanced output like the spatial relationship, for example, investigate the characteristic of adjacent zoning element between two transboundary countries, to investigate if there is a coherence transboundary between the two countries and something like that. This a couple of examples. This is not the final output, but just to give you an idea, because the battery is not, no? No, it's working, okay. Okay. Yeah, this is an example of comparative analysis. You can see in this graph different attributes. We have a couple of countries, Belgium and Spain, for example. We have used the official data in IMONet directly, downloaded directly through the services, interoperable services. You can see in y-axis, for example, the different CUs according to IMONet classification. In the x-axis, the dimension of the zoning element, and each dot represents a zoning element. So and the color instead represent the function that the different member states have used for to represent their plans. For example, you can notice, for example, different approaching in the using of the function. Maybe in Spain, they use a lot of potential and the priority type of zoning element. Instead, in Belgium, there is a lot of allowed and reserved. So, and you can see also the different size of the zoning element. Maybe the Spain have a huge offshore area. The sizes sometimes are very huge because this is a logarithmic scale. This is another example using this comparative multi-use patterns. It is called upset analysis. This is an example that we have used for a recently for the Italian MSP. This kind of analysis can represent the overlap between the different uses for one each plan. So you have an area of this graph that represent where the use is present in a single-use mode, and another area that identify where the use is represented as a multi-use combination. So you can see the black dots represent where the use is present in which combination with other uses. On the top part, you can see the surface of these combinations, and also other information about if the zoning elements are offshore or coastal. This is a specific characteristic of the Italian plan, but this will be generalized to the IMONET data model. Yeah, I think that's all to give you an idea. Of course, the model now we have some script, we have the result that I have shown before are based on some script that we have already produced, but of course we have to develop during the remap project to implement in our infrastructure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefano, Yoni, Marta. We still have a bit of time, so we'll go obviously to the Q&A before we go to the round table. If you can bring it up, thank you very much. Okay, Manuel Frias and okay, Manuel's asking about input data. I don't know, Andre or Yoni, I'm going to be running around with a microphone perhaps. But I guess, I mean, we've talked about this before, but obviously we're talking here about harmonized MSP plans and maps showing output data. But what's the challenge, obviously, with regards to doing this for input data? You're voting which one of you has to answer.
Yes, thank you. The honor goes to me, apparently. But, it's a difficult question, but I was also thinking that in Marta's presentation, you were able to see the human activities data sets from eModNet, and that's in a way few input data sets. Of course, there is other like biodiversity, habitats, fishing. I guess the problem is that it is so broad. Like you have tried to model it with the MSP input data framework, and there you have the clusters. So I think it's so much work to actually harmonize it. So it's still quite far, but gradually we can get there. Like there are, in some projects, there is ideas to harmonize certain, like that there would be a data model for, let's say, wind farm data sets, like so-called high priority data sets could be harmonized. That could maybe make sense. But yeah, it's difficult to answer to this one. Do you, Andre, want to add?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, it's absolutely complex and difficult just to think about it and about the harmonization of the input data. But maybe we should also think about the ModNet, because there's really lots of input data that is already harmonized. No? We have all the offshore wind farms which are planned, which are already there, they are there and they're harmonized. You know? So there is really lots of things already there in the ModNet. The ModNet is a fantastic system and it includes lots of parts of the MSP data framework already there.
Okay. Perhaps just coming back to what Stefano was talking about earlier, the closer integration between marine strategy framework data and how it links with MSP. I mean, could that support the harmonization of input data in the future? Is that a long way in the future? Is it completely unhelpful? I mean, from Stefano's look, I'd say no. Yeah, so using data that's collected as part of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, could that one day in the future support the harmonization, a map of harmonized input data, not just output data? if people are collecting it in a harmonized and structured way. No? That's okay. No problem. There's a question. There's a question here regarding the MSP plans that have been integrated to EMODNet. There's obviously more than 10 member states have published and adopted MSP plans. Why are there only 10 plans in EMODNet? I don't know if... Marta, please.
Thank you, Chris. The process is not as straightforward as I have described it in 4 steps. So it takes a lot of time from the data when the plan is finally approved to be presented, then to be harmonized. And I will give you just an example that was really illustrative. In the German plan, the definition of the activities go to such much level of specificity, like 10 levels of detail, that in order that to be sure that we were harmonizing things that were equal took a lot of time. So technicalities are not only related to data or GIS information, but also to semantics and also to language. And sometimes language barriers are harder to build. So the reason why those data are not there is basically part of that process. In other cases, the capabilities for the member states are focusing, we approve the plan is there. Now merging that into EMODNet takes a further step, so it will go slower. The EMODNet team, in any case, is available to support any member state that is interested in having the plan uploaded as soon as possible.
Thank you, Marta. Before you sit down, I think just the second question probably could come to you as well, maybe. Possibility to combine the human activities layer with other layers that exist on EMODNet?
Oh, I guess that we have seen some cases in the presentation from Stefano and Alessandro. The combination is possible depending, and this is also the benefit of EMODNet, which is not only human activities, but the other thematic data sets. Depending on your interest, you can combine, of course, the information, because as I said, it's harmonized, it's standardized, and it's quality assured. So if it's in EMODNet, you can cross it for sure.
Thank you, Marta. Any questions from the room before we close this section of the meeting?
A quick one. I'm not a data expert, but just to check. Is EMODNet harmonizing data with OBIS and GBIF? I mean the other data sources? Because I understand that a lot other projects are using these data storages in order to create these kind of layers on biodiversity, species, habitats, and so on. Any clue?
I think that goes beyond my comprehension of the EMODNet, because you are not going only into human activities, but in other thematic portals. So I don't know if you may lean a hand. Thank you.
Yes, so my name is Jan Bartelwaard. I used to be heavily involved in EMODNet, and it's an interesting question. And maybe just to come back to Marta's comment on combining different layers from different thematics, this is something that has usually been improved since last year, when all of the thematics from biodiversity, chemistry, physics, and so on, including human activities, are now all in one central location. There was a centralization process. Before that, they were all different thematic portals, so very difficult to break those silos and bring it all together. That has been largely improved by the centralization. So we have one map viewer, and you can overlay the different thematic layers. So that's really a big improvement. Now, to come back to your question on OBIS, yes. In fact, the EMODNet biology is really based on EuroBIS, which is the European node of OBIS. So it's really from the beginning, building up on those infrastructures that exist already. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's, I did see one more question, which, again, reflected one of the challenges. Can you go down a little bit? It was to do with language again. I wonder how we can harmonize if we do not understand the same terms and concepts. Obviously, they've given the example of ocean energy here. We talked about this earlier, and Baruti, you mentioned this as well. different descriptors, different language, different codes, different understanding of what we mean. Marta, you were nodding, so I'm...
I think that one of the beauties is hard to accept it, particularly from the social science point of view, but standard and harmonization helps. So each of the data layers in EMODNet human activities has a specific definition on what is understood by that specific concept. So when we are harmonizing, we ensure, and with the member states, we also, in the MSP data layer, double check that what we are understanding belongs to that specific category, may not capture all the nuances in the specific management plan, MSP plan, but in fact, it belongs to that specific group. So there are clear definitions on the data set, what is included and what is not, according to the different human activities defined.
Do you want to add something, Stefano?
And also EMODNet maintained the original name, that it was also important to have this, to track, to make this process transparent. So, for example, and this is very important also to have different classification. For example, regarding the human uses, we have in the EMODNet data layer, MSP data layer, we have, as shown before, the harmonized term, but also the original one in English and the original one in the original language. So there is a transparent process that can be used also to as cross-check or to have at least, you can always go to the original name and use the original term that was used in the plan by the country.
Thank you, Stefano. Just the last point there, who is the EMODNet project team? If I'm right in saying there's an EMODNet secretariat, they have a dedicated email address which is available on the EMODNet website. Thank you very much to all the speakers in the last session and all the other sessions. I'm going to ask everyone to give you a round of applause because there's a lot of work that's been there. As we said, we now move on to the round table. We still have over 150 people online, I think I saw, so opening microphones is still challenging. But we have created a word cloud, so people online, if you want to contribute to the discussion, feel free to enter your thoughts in terms of priority topics. We thought a good way to start this, and we're going to have to run around with microphones, so Thanos, I hope you feel energetic. Okay. I'm going to go to our co-chairs, Andrea and Ioni, in terms of next steps. Either you want to reflect on any of the outputs that have been done, or how you think they could be extended, or where do you see the future of the TEG on MSP data going from now? Please.
Okay, thank you. Well, for now, we finalized the second cycle, and we finalized quite well within this 4 deliverables within the application, not just delivering the report. We also show that everything what we provided could be applied, and this was quite important. So where we go within the next phase of the TEG, we have to discuss. We see some examples that we have to take it out. This was the presentation of the maritime special plans, which are on the EMODNet. They could go, we could really put our efforts there. Also, there is the idea how to deal within the MSP data model that needs to be maintained, how this is maintained, and we are also talking about this. And also within the topics that were today presented, we also see there is a possibility to go farther within these topics. And what we see within the subgroups, they delivered, they provided a report, but I think they don't want to stop it there. They want to go farther. And this could be quite interesting if we see and go more in the details and more work to done. I don't know, Joni.
Yes, thanks. I think you raised good points, and just to echo what you said, I think world is not ready yet. So in that sense, the work of these subgroups, depending on how it will proceed, could be something that is worth pursuing. I'm looking at the Slido screen, and there are some good suggestions already there on the priority topics. I also would like to raise the point that Marta raised in the IMONET presentation. There was this visualization of plan data, which is quite challenging because there are so many overlapping layers, and I'm sure there can be quite simple technical solution for improving that, and that is something that we could perhaps look into with the IMONET colleagues on how to improve that, because I think that's quite specific data set in the IMONET human activities portal, so that could deserve some further thought. But yeah, I would also echo what Andre said on those other aspects. Thank you.
Thank you, Joni. Thank you, Andre. I mean, yeah, we can see on the Slido, obviously, there's a number of topics which a lot of them have Marta's name on them, really. So I'll come to you in a minute, Marta, but socio-economic data, stakeholder engagement, monitoring and evaluation, harmonization, ocean governance, again for you, Marta. So I'm going to bring you a microphone. Oh, Anja, please.
So thank you to the people online for this welcoming on the priority topics. My gut reaction is be careful with what you wish. My expertise is on governance. I've been enjoying a lot translating governance to a data approach. Translating socioeconomic data to a spatial approach is also fun. So there are a lot of challenges on those processes that for sure can benefit from the tech expertise. But that means that we need brain power, because, you know, there are many things that are happening, or many people that can be doing things that we are not aware of. So please join the effort and the collective thinking, and we are willing to hear from you and to learn from you, because those two iterations of the tech show how much we can achieve if we work together.
Thank you, Marta. And that's it, a nice call for more people to join the TEG. It's open to anyone with an interest and that wants to participate. You simply email the European MSP platform team, and we can add you to the mailing list. Jan Bart, if you will permit me, I'm going to come and see you. Maybe unintentionally, but obviously you introduced yourself and said that you used to be heavily involved in MODNet, and I understand that perhaps you haven't followed the work of the TEG for some time. So having listened to this, I just wonder what reflections you have on the work of the TEG so far, and obviously any ideas you have in terms of closer collaboration with MODNet or with regards to some of these priority topics which are emerging on the screen.
Thank you for putting me on the spot.
You are welcome.
No, I enjoyed very much listening to the presentations today, and I have to say I'm quite impressed with the amount of work that has been done in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say. Since I think you officially started in 2020, but you already were working informally before that, I know, as a group. So I remember we had quite a lot of discussions at that time with IMODNet to try and make the IMODNet services, which is a long-term EC service, much more user-friendly and useful for MSP practitioners, and to underpin this process. We identified a number of challenges and working areas, and I have to say you touched upon all of the open questions that I think at least were on my list at that time. And then the implementers, Jose and others, have been working very hard together with you to address those points, and I have to say I'm really happy to say I wasn't aware of the wealth of work that you have been doing in the output, so quite pleased to see that. I think the fact that you were supported also by a number of DG MARE projects that were quite visionary, and also looking across the borders and collaboration and exchange between the different practitioners in the member states really helped a lot to really put it to the test and put a lot of drive behind it. And also forced collaboration between the different expertise groups that were somewhat present but a bit scattered around the sea basins. I think we had a discussion not so long ago internally, because the question now comes back to us since you are presenting these results and the progress. Okay, how can we take up some of these recommendations and some of these findings across, let's say, the eModNet platform? How can we reinforce also as a community, as an in situ data service, some of the recommendations, and also help you carry out so that these are taken up and that these recommended practices are really widely known and also provide the guidance to assist those developing the marine spatial plans to adhere to the data model, so that we are ready as a community to do that. So I would recommend that there is a dialogue now also with the Secretariat and in particular the technical team that is now in place managing or overseeing the central portal, because now we have one map viewer. That's has been a difficult exercise, quite intense. Obviously, some of the features and functionalities of the individual portals have maybe been a little bit, smoothened out because they had to apply to all of them. So now it's important to know from your community and from your experience what is missing. What features or functionalities do we need to improve so that we can make it more user-friendly for MSP purposes, but also to identify how can we indeed go one step further. If I hear about input data, okay, you can think about harmonized input layers, but some of the layers, for example, the bathymetry layer, now it's a digital product in a way, but if you click on it, you can see what are the survey data, what are the input data that have been used to develop this modeled output. And if on the national level you can have that information, what kind of input data have been used, and then even maybe not immediately retrieve them, that may be a step too far yet, but at least identify them and see who were the providers and where you can find that, that will be already fantastic as a next step. So I think there's a lot that we can do, not only in visualizing and making available the plans, but also in making, let's say, the wealth of data, environmental and human activities data available for, especially now that we're thinking about regional sea basin level marine spatial planning, really to underpin that process and think big there. So yeah, we should be ambitious. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan Bart, and sorry for putting you on the spot. Is there anyone in the room that wants to take the floor? No? And I can, going back to Slido, obviously there's some points there which we've touched on, and they're we've got socioeconomic data, harmonization. There's a couple of smaller ones on there, which I think are also important to cover. I mean, there's one there on training of national experts to use the data. I mean, this is something that we've always considered is part of the TEG. If member states or at the regional level, experts would like to reach out to the TEG for support, they are very welcome to do so. And through the MSP assistance mechanism, we will try to deliver that support. And we have had some bilateral discussions with some member states before. But there's a couple of other ones on there which may be a bit harder to think about where they come in. So I saw one on equity. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything on that one. Obviously, we've got adaptability. An interesting one there is obviously on the MSP review and monitoring and evaluation. Obviously, a lot of the member states now are currently undertaking review and revision of the MSP plans. And obviously, the work that the TEG's done to support the monitoring and evaluation process directly feeds into that. But I don't know if anyone wants to comment on anything further on how the work of the TEG could be maybe used by member states in revision and update. Any thoughts? Can we take that further in the next stage?
Okay. Well, we showed on one of the first presentation was the MSP data framework. So this was directly something that tried to structure how to deal within the data management of this part of the maritime spatial planning. So I believe that that we can see within the application, we can see what are the problems and what can actually be updated and more delivered more work in that direction. I think this is the point that the more development will become within the direct application of the monitoring evaluation.
Okay, thank you, Andre. Anything from anybody else? Obviously, all of the Slido is going to be downloaded. It'll be shared with the TEG, and you can have a reflection on it and what this means for the future in terms of planning the next phase. But if obviously, we don't need to use all the time. We heard some very kind words from Jan Bart and obviously from Juan Ronco online about the achievements of the TEG. And obviously a lot of that wouldn't have been possible without the support of CINEA and MARE, but Anya, as one of the people that created the TEG alongside MARE, any thoughts, any aspirations from what CINEA would like from this?
Thank you. Well, I heard from Jan Bart that we need to be ambitious, and that's always been my approach as well. I remember hassling Andre and Yoni about what do we do with all this, how to make it work in real life, in the process of planning, revising, monitoring, in the trial and error that is in there as well. And I think we have a lot of work on our plate. We have done a lot. I'm very, very happy to be part of this exercise and to have been the one a bit hassling you to move forward. And sometimes I'm a bit impatient because I would want to see more. But I understand that it's really complex. And we see that there's a lot to be done still. So I think the TEG has shown that bringing experts together has really a lot of added value. Not only in this kind of gatherings, but also because there is spin-offs of the TEG. And I think, well, REMAP was implicitly on the agenda today because there were lots of examples, and REMAP is a clear spin-off of the TEG, but also what is happening, the discussion with EMONET is a clear spin-off of the work done. So I hope we can continue on this path. And as far as I know, I think MARE and CINEA are ready to support further the work of the TEG and of all the projects that can be inspired by it. So thank you.
Thank you, Anya. And since you mentioned MARE, Xavier or Celine, either of you, I'm going to come to you, Xavier.
Thank you, and thank you all. Well, basically, when we prepared this workshop, we had the perception that a lot has been produced, and it was work taking some time and disseminated this work. It is as good as is being known and used, and so that's why we plan to organize this seminar and trying to reach a larger audience beyond the dense and small community of experts. And we see from the registration and from the attendance here in the room, but also online, that it was quite a fair guess, and there's a large and active community of experts on data for MSP, but also larger than MSP process, that are interested to learn from advanced work, technical issues, and try to make links between policy. And we had some very interesting inputs about the link between objective of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive and with MSP. It's interesting now to have also a community of MSP experts trying to make these links. I think it goes both sense, and I think the data experts on MSP are also well placed to give advice or suggestion in these large policy processes. So I think that has been very fruitful. We also see that
this community is talking to each other thanks to a number of platforms, thanks to projects of different kind. And I think that's very important that we take time also to meet as we directly or online as we did today, because that's also how we learn from the work of one another. To have a good and fair peer review process is also very important. Who are the users? Are we getting where we want to be? Are we delivering a product that is of use for someone, not only because we believe we can optimize the processes? So I think this bit of reality check and open and productive peer review process is very important for this community, from our perspective. So thank you all very much. I'm sure we will continue this conversation. It was a lot of work to produce what you did, some work to organize also today's discussion, but we are very pleased of the contribution of all of you. So thanks.
Andre, please.
Yeah, I would also like to thank you again for organizing this workshop. We really are not used to this kind of attention that we had today. This is incredible. We didn't expect that much people that are going to online, and we didn't know that we are doing something that has an interest on this big level. But what I also wanted to say, this workshop was really a surprise for us, and in a way that went that well, that get that much attention, and that we could actually present our results on that big audience that was today here. So thank you again.
Thank you, Xavier. Thank you, Andre. Oh, Michelle, please.
So for those online that cannot see me, Michelle Quesada from IOC UNESCO. And I want to explain why the MSP roadmap, it's in the agenda. So the MSP roadmap, it's a joint framework between the European Commission and IOC UNESCO to accelerate MSP process. And for us, it's really important to be here to learn more about what the TEG has done, which is quite a lot and quite impressive. And congratulations to all of you involved. And in the MSP roadmap, we have a specific pillar on knowledge support. And we have our very first action of this roadmap. It's about data for MSP. And what's written there is this action aims at promoting the transfer of knowledge expertise at EU level by DG MARE to a wider community of planners and technical experts so that they can find, access, and structure data information for MSP. So the idea is to really bring the experience of the TEG to a broader audience. And I'm sure that some people following us online, they are from outside Europe. So as a next step for the TEG, I would like to also add to it the contribution to the next data toolboxes that MSP Global is developing. So I think we can learn a lot from your experience and see how we can expand this knowledge to be implemented in other countries. So it's an invitation, and I already thank you for previous support done to the project.
Thank you very much. So to conclude, congratulations. We still have over 100 people online, and it's been a long afternoon, so that's remarkable. And I think that just goes to say the interest that's and the attention that your work's getting, Andre. Congratulations to all of the TEG. Those of you here, those of you not here that may listen to the recording afterwards, there's been a huge amount of work, and it's been a real pleasure to follow. And as Anya said, there's a huge amount of work still to do. The TEG welcomes new members, so anyone that wants to join, please feel free to do so. And maybe next time we have one of these workshops, you know, people online may be joining us in the room. But I had pleasure to give you about an hour of your afternoon back. Thank you very much. Good day.